OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
7:30 Friday morning. Very welcome along to OTB AM. Aisling, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian. How are you?
I'm flying, thank you. And Colm, good morning to you.
Aisling and Adrian, good morning. Happy Friday.
I knew you were going to say it. No, Colm, just no. It's not happening.
Where do you stand?
You say that every morning, do you?
No, I
Happy
just.
Thursday.
No, I don't. No, well, actually, that's fair. I should say it for other days as well. What's so special about Fridays?
He's been on edge, isn't he? He's sort of rambling a small, but he's not that coherent.
No, he made this point to me in Owen one of the days, and he was hammering home this Happy Friday. It's not happy for everyone. We just don't know, so you can't go around saying Happy Friday. And now here we go.
Oh right, wow. She's unlike Colm to have a strong opinion about something that makes no difference whatsoever. Commiserations. You all right?
That's tough. It's tough.
You okay?
It's tough. Yeah, I was just going about my day yesterday. Just trying to live my life and. Just went into the office, and chatting away as you do, and I just got a text, Federer, crying emoji from a pal, and I looked on Twitter and there he was, statement. I was 4 images long. I was
in the middle of some sort of an online thing yesterday, and I just got a text saying Federer, full stop. I thought, oh Jesus, what is that? The possibilities here are endless. Let's open Twitter.
No, they're not. The possibility was very straightforward. If anyone is texting anybody but Federer at the moment, 41 years of age, hasn't played since Wimbledon last year. Everyone knows what it's about. So when I got the text, I don't want to do this to myself. But then the push notifications were coming in. Then went onto Twitter, and it was 3 minutes after he had posted the retirement message. But it's a very sad day. My own personal relationship with Federer. Now that you ask.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Now that you've asked yourself. Go ahead.
When he first came through, I was like, wow. This guy is sensational. Yeah. And then I ended up having an irrational dislike for him in the mid 2000s, simply because he was just too good. He was too good for everyone.
Was this before the emergence of the other two? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So he kind of came in this transitional period for men's tennis, which was post Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi, and then just before Rafael Nadal really started dominating on other surfaces beyond clay. So Nadal won his first French Open in 2005, but at that point he was really just warming up on grass and hard courts, and then Novak Djokovic was still a few years away. I mean, the first time they played in a Grand Slam, I think 2007. So in the intermediate years, in 2003 up till 2006, Federer was just absolutely untouchable. And that's the point where I thought, no, this guy's too dominant, it's no fun. And it wasn't even that, the way Nadal and Djokovic would beat players of lesser ability it would actually still be through graft. It was superior ability, but there was a lot of hard-fought points, and they really put the effort in to beat their opponents, whether it's first round or final. But with Federer, he would just embarrass you. And loads of opponents have said that when other players in the tour are talking about the big three and the best of the big three, and there's differing opinions. Everybody has a different opinion on who's the best, and there's arguments for all three. But what people say regularly, other players, is that Nadal and Djokovic are just absolutely amazing. They're probably going to end up as two of the greats in terms of numbers, but nobody could destroy you like Federer. And it was the way he was doing it without seemingly breaking sweat on his side.
Yeah, that was the big thing.
To his game.
He looked effortless, I felt, a lot of the time when he played.
Yeah, but it wasn't, you see, and that's the thing, because he put so much work in behind the scenes, and there's loads of stats to back up just his greatness. And look, we'll get into it with Jenny Claffey later. We'll break down, Federer, the technical player, what made him so brilliant. But one of the statistics that have re-emerged in the last 24 hours is that he played over 1,500 tour matches, and he never retired once from a match, ever.
Wow.
So he actually, one of his underrated abilities was his resilience and his toughness. And you actually wouldn't really associate that when you look at him, because he was so graceful and calm and smooth and technical and the most naturally gifted player. But he actually had mental strength that was unparalleled. He was never flustered. And I've been reading so many tribute pieces from him in the last day, and one thing that I was actually laughing out loud as reading it in the office earlier was his one-handed backhand was just so beautiful to watch, but it was actually quite inaccurate. It was very inconsistent. And every so often Federer would try a one-handed backhand, and it would hit the rim of the racket, and it would go way up into the air, and it would end up with the fans, and everybody would kind of start laughing a bit. But Federer was never flustered by that. and he never even looked to see where the ball was going. And someone famous, like Prince William or something, might catch the ball and everyone would start laughing. But Federer wouldn't look. And he would just be like, he would have a momentary pause where he would just stand still and look at his racket as if to say, how did something like that happen to someone as great as me? And then he would move on to the next point and just fix his hair. He had always one bit of hair that would come down over his headband, fix that, put it behind his headband, and would go again. And then the next point was probably going to be an ace. Mental strength.
Did the Prince William story actually happen, or did you just make that
No,
up?
I was just to really, like, you know, stand out from the crowd there. I was like, he's in the news.
Random person I've been looking at.
I'll just show it. It was basically to say, you know, there could be royalty catching a stray Roger Federer ball. It didn't matter to Federer. The only royalty for Federer was himself on the court. You know, and actually, he got to that point, and he did get to that point because it was the 2009 Wimbledon, and at that point there was just nobody to touch him really at Wimbledon. The year before, Nadal beat him in that epic, but he was still kind of the king of grass, and he won Wimbledon that year in 2009 against Andy Roddick, who he beat in 3 Wimbledon finals. He won that final set 16-14. It was an amazing match. But that was the year where Federer wore the blazer. Oh, yeah. He had the white blazer going to the court. So, you know, he was royalty. And like, he did see himself like that. And, you know, of all the tributes coming in, it was that he's a great guy, and, like, really genuinely loved across the tour. Family man, like himself and Merkel go way back before they both became famous. Like, they were both emerging tennis players. He's built an incredible brand for himself. But there was a touchy side to him too, and I think we should say that as well. I don't think it should all be positive.
He had a temper issue when he was younger.
I wasn't even going to mention that, but yeah, that's really interesting. Is that Bjorn Borg was the same, and Bjorn Borg was probably the only other player who was more calm than Federer. But he used to be like a stroppy teen, and Federer was awful to deal with in the late 90s, and he was coming through. And there's footage you can see. This is that he would be castigating, in fairness, usually himself, but he'd be smashing rackets. You know, not too dissimilar to what we would talk about in Nick Kyrgios about all his bad behaviour. He was kind of like that. And then I suppose he just had a word with himself, like Borg did a couple of decades earlier. And he sorted himself out on the mental side. And every so often you'd see Federer kind of lambaste himself. And it was very rare, like, you know, he was kind of unflustered, generally speaking. So he just changed his mentality completely. But what I was actually going to talk about was, you know, he would kind of have unkind words for the umpires in the chains of ends.
I'm just laughing at, like, he's
no,
like, I hadn't prepared that answer, but here's something
I know why
else.
you're laughing. But in, like, chains of ends, if something contentious had happened in the previous game, he wouldn't be shy in telling the umpire what he thought about him. And, like, it's picked up in the mics. If you go and you'll see it online, is like an umpire would try to justify their reasoning, and Federer would be like, no, don't talk to me, don't talk to me. He wouldn't even look at him. You know, he wouldn't even look at the umpire. So there was that side to him too every so often, and he could be a bit smug.
Not quite Nick Kyrgios though, is it? I'm not even going to look at you.
I'm just saying, I think we should balance it by. And I love him, and I suppose you tend to criticise people that you love the most, like with Federer, because I absolutely adore the guy. But I think
favourite tennis player of all time, or no?
No, Goran Ivanisevic it was just a nostalgic thing for me. But I would think, yeah, of the big three, he'd be my favourite overall, yeah. But it wasn't like that.
Not your favourite tennis player of all time?
No, not my favourite player of all time.
The GOAT?
For me, yeah. But I would totally listen to someone say Djokovic's or Nadal or McEnroe, Borg, Sampras, Agassi, whatever. But for me, Federer is the GOAT because he made the sport so unbelievably enjoyable to watch, whether you were a tennis fan or not. And that's the ultimate compliment. Because even when he missed, it was kind of spectacular and a little bit smooth.
Will he go down as one of the all-time sporting greats?
Yeah, 100%. Switzerland, Mount Rushmore, he's on it. He's definitely on it.
Yeah, he's Kashmir. Iron jumpers.
But I think so, yeah. I think, like, you know, like, it's a list that you'll never be able to properly quantify. But, like, if there's a top 10 best sports people ever, you know, he'd be in my top 10.
Aaron Kelly saying, morning lads, and morning to you, Aaron. Any ideas why Alexa's telling me I can't play OTB Sports because of regional restrictions? Waterford's not that far away. Not sure, Aaron, but keep at it, keep trying. Alexa, play OTB Sports Radio. That would have, if Colm hadn't spoken across.
Do it again there.
Come on, all right.
Do it again.
James McCullough says, have you seen Reynald's decision in the Australia-New Zealand game yesterday? I'm shocked people are supporting it. He hadn't enforced the rule throughout the game and is surely not in the spirit of rugby. We will talk about that a little bit more with some of our guests. And here is a flavour of what's coming up for you on the show today, between now and 10 o'clock this morning. We're going to have Ronan O'Gara, first time this season, in 10 minutes' time, is going to drop by, and we may well put that point to him about the Bledisloe Cup yesterday. Samuel Luckhurst of The Athletic will talk all things Manchester United. Jenny Claffey will expand on Colm's points about the retirement of the GOAT, or not. GA Club latest with Aisling at 10 to 9 this morning. Alan Quinlan will be in studio at 10 past 9, and we've Emma Byrne as well lined up from the show last night. One other thing that we wanted to touch on at the top of the show was just the obviously Todd Bowley comments that have sort of been doing the rounds this week, and everybody's picked up on them, everybody's got a view on it. You know, there should be an all-star game, North v South, and there should be some sort of relegation playoff system, and it just, you know, it was all kind of bubbling along, and there was definitely something eating away at me about the general reaction to it. I was looking at a lot of stuff online, a lot of the English newspaper writers, pundits. There was just this tone of a sneer coming off a lot of the commentary around Todd Bowley, and it had been sort of, I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it would certainly been bubbling away. And then we had the Jamie Carragher comments that might have been yesterday, possibly even the night before, where he was saying that you know, it's incredibly arrogant to speak like that from, you know, somebody who's only owned a Premier League club for 6 weeks, and it just dripped with arrogance for me that you would not be open to. Carragher did qualify his comments in the Paramount piece that where these quotes were taken from, to say that, you know, you have to be open to new ideas, but also at the same time he was like, well, you're not really supposed to have ideas if you're just joined the Premier League. And it just speaks to this football snobbery that exists, and you don't have to be a former player to subscribe to it. It happens every day of the week that fans, media, former players, pundits, whatever it might be, just this football snobbery about like what you're not entitled to do or have an opinion on. Thierry Henry was sat alongside him in the studio, who wasn't even able to verbalise his comments about it. They were like himself and Jamie Carragher and Micah Richards were like three schoolyard bullies who'd stolen the new kids' lunch and were all sort of sniggering around with their pals, and, you know, he's not entitled to this view. Like, it's just, it really speaks to this sort of football elitism that exists and the snobbery that exists, and it really got under my skin, I have to say, yesterday. I just thought, you're absolutely, and if you've invested enough to take on a Premier League club, you're entitled to a view about it. Like, have it out about the ideas. They're great conversation starters. Like, we obviously were chatting about it in the studio here during the week as well. Great conversation starters. You don't necessarily have to agree with it. I remember Arsene Wenger a few years ago was talking about like doing away with the throw-in, replace it with like a kick-in or something like that. Mad idea. But like, nobody was saying Arsene Wenger is entitled to a view about it.
It's absolutely okay to chat about these things, yeah.
Have it out.
100%, yeah. And like, new ideas is a good thing. I don't think an All-Stars would be that bad of an idea. You know, absolutely not. But I just hate the whole former players or players thinking that because you haven't played, and I know it's not just that, and I know it's not just former players, but for me that's a really annoying one. Yeah. That you can't, like, sport is for everyone, football is for everyone to enjoy, and I just, I really hate that. And yeah, absolutely, just snobbery at the highest regard. And what was Thierry Henry's point? Well,
honestly, there was no point. He just did a lot of this, I mean, like, oof. Thierry, will you say something? Like, if you have a point there, just get it out. But he wasn't even able to, like, as a paid football pundit who was looking down his nose at this guy who'd invested like tens of millions into Chelsea, that he wasn't able to elicit a point, which was absolutely infuriating. But like, I don't know, it is something that exists. I see it all the time amongst fans, amongst pundits, amongst the media, just this snobbery about, like, you know, people's entitlement to have a view about football. Like, I spent 3 years in college getting a degree, and during that time alone, I spent far more time watching football than I did focus on my degree. Not to mind like the years previous and the years subsequently. Like, you know, I think anybody who's watching you know, if you're going to games, you're watching games, whatever it is, whatever you're listening to it, you're reading it, you're watching this, whatever it is, you're entitled to a view about football. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Definitely not Jamie Carragher and Thierry Henry and Micah Richards.
And like, you need the fans, you need supporters, you need people watching the games. So like, having these type of views, without the fans, there wouldn't be these massive occasions. There wouldn't be the Premier League. You know, you need the fans there, the supporters that are going to the games. And yeah, I never get it. Even sometimes players wondering about pundits and what is their job really? What do they do? Did you ever get that? Where I just think that.
Oh, and listen, and by the way, Aisling, right now, this might be sort of a reverse point that sort of undermines my previous point, but like, there's plenty of pundits that you listen to, and I was listening to one this morning on the radio who, like, the sum total of what they're saying is a bed of sand. Like, there's absolutely nothing in it. So, you know, they're definitely not the type of people to be telling you exactly what your view on the whole thing. There's an element of anti-American about it. There definitely is. There was the same sort of... Do you remember when Jesse Marsh got the Leeds job and he came in? There was a lot of this Ted Lasso stuff going on. And, like, that is just...
Oh, yeah. They don't think they know as well.
Like.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Mika Richards is making a big play about the fact that Todd Bowley had mistakenly said that Salah and De Bruyne had come through Premier League academies, that they'd come through the Chelsea Academy or the City Academy or whatever, which isn't the case. But, like, ultimately, who the hell cares? He didn't know about that. He got it wrong. Who cares? It's just this, I don't know, this snobbery column.
There is. Well, what's your
listening? Aisling is the.
No, I'm producing.
Somebody's telling me here. Relax, Adrian. Says Dan Delaney.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking throughout the whole rant there.
Well said, Adrian. Completely agree. Reaction to bowling in the UK has been shocking. Says Tennis Tank.
A regular.
Yeah.
Didn't know I was talking about tennis.
Anyway, it's anti-American. Says Tennis Tank again there. So,
but come here to me. I presume your stance is that you don't mind a disagreement with Todd Bowley's.
Have a full debate about the ideas.
It's Carragher's last bit of the quote, so it's you know, I think it's incredibly arrogant, which you've already referenced. And the line I thought was kind of most striking in that sentence was about a league that you don't know.
Yeah,
and that's you have no right to say.
That's so wrong.
Yeah, so like, what kind of a quote for you would have been acceptable from Carragher there? It would have been, I see your point, but I disagree with this, or something even a bit stronger. Because there's something that's vexed you here particularly.
Well, no, as I said, if you were listening earlier on, what I said was that it was the bubbling along of this idea all week, and there was loads of the big football correspondents in England talking about it online, posting about it on social media, saying that, you know, looking down their noses, absolute sneering at Todd Bowley for his comments. If you watch it's like 3 or 4 minutes of this Paramount conversation, it's just dripping with that stuff. Like, it just is. There's no substance to what they're saying, really. Yeah. They're not really debating the ideas. And I would accept, actually, I think the All-Star idea is a cracker. It's definitely one of those that you might see in the calendar at some point down the track. There are loads of reasons why it might not happen. Contracts, injuries, fixture schedules, all sorts of interesting stuff like that. But at least have that debate. Their debate wasn't that. It was just sneering at Todd Bowley.
Yeah, no, see, the problem is with that, that's a totally fair point, but you're referencing this in this conversation on Paramount, but it's an echo chamber there, so no one's gonna step back in that group and say, actually, lads, we should give the guy a bit of time. It doesn't matter where he's from.
Say that.
Yeah, but no one's going to do that, and I don't think that will change. I think if people say what you're saying now more often in more platforms, then maybe it will. In time change, but there's 100% of snobbery, particularly towards that side of the world from this side of the world when it comes to football.
Yeah, it says to come and speak like that. This is from Jamie Carragher, when he's not even proved he can run a Premier League club yet.
It's like, you know, they're just look, for me, I mean, people are entitled to disagree with what I'm saying, but it does get my goat. Frank saying Adrian's Friday morning, for Christ's sake. Sorry, Frank, I will lighten in a little bit. JP Wright, good morning to you, JP. Met Jesse March in a pub in Salzburg during the Euros. Top man with a huge football IQ. I mean, nobody should be surprised about that. He's managing in the Premier League. It's supposed to come at the territory. Could it be linked to when the Super League that was attempted to be discussed during COVID, says Michael? The entire project was seemed to be conceived and pushed by American billionaires. Maybe there's a bit of scar tissue there, is what you're saying. Frank saying that he thought Fridays were supposed to be jolly. They'll get jolly, it's fine, don't worry about it. And Roy Dunner was saying facts don't matter on OTB, especially when it comes to Manchester United. I don't know what's the reference there.
I haven't even mentioned United.
No,
we could.
Anyway, I mean, we not yet.
Can, if you like. They won again.
Murray says your job is the same as theirs. Your opinions mean nothing also.
Oh, there we go. There's my point.
That's fine. That's all right. That's okay. You're entitled to that. That's you get that off your chest, Murray Hislop, and feel better for doing that. Where else have we got here? Bum. Single backhand is dead in tennis. Long live King Federer, says Danny Mack.
Man, Danny. Yeah.
Nothing else to say. That's your.
No, I think it is. I think it's a high risk shot.
Yeah.
It's not advised, the one-handed backhand, but it looks amazing. Have you ever tried a one-handed backhand?
No.
Have you ever
Do you
played-
actually play tennis?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
You strike me as one of these people who's just
Go on,
got a lot of views, but you don't play a lot.
No, I do play. See what? Oh, that's literally the argument you
You're
just made.
contradicting yourself, Adrian.
I know.
I
Yeah,
just said it like I would have every
Rewind that,
entitlement.
don't
But I mean, this is
Delete.
this
I didn't say
is
you weren't
this
entitled
is
to it.
so.
I didn't say you
this
weren't.
is so
Hang on a
classic
second.
you. Like,
I didn't
it's
say you weren't
so
entitled to it.
Unbelievably you, right?
I didn't
You
say you
see
weren't
this thing on
entitled.
Twitter, you're like, oh, I'll quote tweet that. Might get a bit of interaction. This would be good for me. So I'm like, oh, this is
That's
rubbish. This is
untrue. That's
disgraceful.
untrue.
This is. I can't believe they said this. And then literally, the next point you make was like, why are you even talking about tennis? You don't play it.
I didn't
First
say.
of all,
I
that's-
did not say that.
That's essentially
I did
what.
not
That's,
say. No, no,
I got that from your tone.
As usual,
and your
I
body
did not
language.
say that. Let's just make sure
That's
that
what I
that's
got.
absolutely on the record.
That's what I got.
But you do play tennis, what you're saying. Anyway,
I do.
after all of that
Occasionally-
nonsense now for the last
occasionally.
minute.
I play locally. There is a court you can rent for €6 an hour, which is very reasonable. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's €12 really because you're not going to play with yourself. But like, you know, you play like €12 is quite
That would be
reasonable.
an unusual tennis match, although not beyond the bounds.
Well, if you had a wall, you're happy out, but I don't have a wall to play with, so just get a person instead, you know. And
That's the booing speciality. Like the,
well, that's what I'm saying. So I try the one-handed backhand. Like they're wild. Like I mean, I have so much even greater respect for any player on the tour who can make that such an effective shot. Actually, Dominic Thiem, who's kind of fallen off the face of the earth after winning the US Open in 2020, he has a gorgeous one-handed backhand. But no, you need a two-hander for stability because like it's a high-risk shot otherwise. But I'm a two-hander, backhand,
what's the
and a one-handed forehand.
what's your greatest achievement in tennis?
Just to keep on playing at my age.
Nothing is what you're
Just
saying.
to grow,
So you didn't-
you can improve.
You didn't play it all underage, like when you were young?
No, I did. That's when
sorry.
that's when I mostly played. So I got it from my mother. So my mother played camogie
Yes.
for Clare. She won the All Ireland 1974 against Dublin at Croke Park. Infuriatingly, she never mentions this ever. Like if that was me, I would lead with that all the time. But she just is like, oh yeah, whatever. Medals up in the attic at home. And then when she moved to Cork, she gave up the camogie, and then she transitioned into tennis because, you know, it's a natural enough transition, hand-eye coordination, and she took to it extremely well to the point where it was quite embarrassing for the street cred when a teenager playing my mother, who was absolutely whipping me around the court with like a whipped forehand down the line, left-hander. Left-hander is very tough to play against. So she taught me well. So I played a lot. I played very competitively when I was in my teens. And then...
I mean, very competitively. What does that mean?
as in a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Not
You
at a
don't
high
hear
level,
that
like I mean,
really
it competitively
in
like a lot.
You don't hear that enough, I don't feel,
About
in Ireland.
tennis.
Me playing tennis.
Yeah, but
it's true.
yeah, playing it competitively underage, like
Yep.
it's not there's not a lot of clubs about. There's more and more now, and I know Jenny spoke about it a few times with us. But I just found like growing up, I only ever played tennis when you went on holidays, and there was a tennis court, you know, in the hotel when you're abroad. That was the thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Other than that,
and
it was,
Wimbledon rackets.
and we were all
Wimbledon.
Wimbledon. Everyone was out with the rackets then, but other than that, it was almost difficult to get involved in tennis in Ireland.
Seb says, what do you think Roy Keane would have to say about this? It's just like, I mean, I don't know what he's referring to, but he could be referring to anything. That's
Yeah, no, then I stopped playing a bit because football took over. I had to decide my weekends. You know?
The other thing that we just wanted to touch on was the
Oh, you don't want to top it then? Okay.
what do you want to talk about?
No, I'm joking.
You're back
Go on.
listening
I'm
now.
joking.
Okay,
Go
you're
ahead,
back. You're tuned
please.
in again.
Continue.
The other thing that we want to talk about is the couple of things actually, but just the Roscommon Chiefs proposed 96-week ban for referee assault. Conor McKeown reporting the Irish Independent this morning. It's reported elsewhere, of course, as well. Roscommon GA's disciplinary chiefs proposed a 96-week suspension for the person involved in the incident that led to the hospitalisation of a local referee and the abandonment of a minor football championship game. So it seems like that's the Category 4 infraction, as it's called here, governing any type of assault on a referee, umpire, linesman or sideline official, carries a minimum 48-week ban. And I also think there's a cap on the maximum of that. I think Will was saying yesterday that it seems to be kind of 2 years. It feels like the sort of thing they should leave more open-ended. Like an assault on an official is up there with the most serious of things you could do, and how it would you know, there's just loads of other stuff that you would do that would end up in a 2-year ban. That one just feels so egregious that why would you put a maximum on it?
Yeah, it does, and you just don't want an allowance for this. And I feel like over the last number of months, even the last year, we've talked about so many different issues within the GA, and you know, fans shouting onto the pitch, you know, shouting at managers, obviously refs. We've heard about so much, and now to hear of an assault, it feels like there's an allowance in a way, and it just can't creep into the game. It can't be allowed, and yeah, 2 years. I don't agree that it's long enough for something like this. It should be a life ban, to do something like that. It's really unthinkable. But yeah, 2 years, it
just doesn't seem right.
No,
and
it doesn't.
I think that you also have to make an example out of the case. That's the reality, because it's become very high profile, and obviously we were speaking to a couple of referees in the direct aftermath of it a couple of weeks ago, and like, people are talking about it. It has disappeared, as these things tend to do. They follow a 48-hour news cycle and then they disappear off the radar again. Back today because of the recommendation there, but I do feel that you have to. It doesn't send out a strong enough message for me. Like a 96-week ban, does that make anybody think twice if you're headed to any sort of a game this weekend in GAA or beyond? Does it make anybody think twice about, like, well, I better watch my behaviour because I could be out of the game for good here? Now look, I don't know what happens after 2 years with this person. Do they end up coming back into that club and you're welcome back in? Oh, good, well done, you've served your ban, and on you come again and back into the sideline. I don't know, but it does feel like as if there's an extra step here, that somebody of that mentality will at some point be entitled to come back onto the sideline. Feels.
And what does the ban mean? That he doesn't go to the games? Who stops him? How does it work? Can he walk into the clubhouse?
But I presume it governs. They typically tend to govern all activity. So
yeah. See, that's very hard to police that as well. But how many times have we talked about abusive referees in the GAA over the last year or so? Like, it's a crazy amount, and it's constant. And I think that was the tip of it all. And 2 years, it doesn't seem long enough.
There is a few fixtures as well this weekend, Aisling. That's the club action is the thing that's tiding us through all of these fallow times where there's like nothing happening or whatever. So you marked our card last week. What have we got to look forward to this weekend?
Yeah, there's loads happening this weekend as well. Things are hotting up across the country with a lot of quarterfinals, semi-finals and even finals. And it's quite diverse. So some counties are only into round one and then some are into finals. So it's mad the way it's being done. But one of the ones to look out for probably is the Dublin Senior football quarterfinals are happening this weekend. And they're taking place in Parnell Park. It's a double header on Saturday and Sunday. So you've Nafina and Whitehall Columkill. That's at 5:15 in Parnell Park on Saturday, and at 7 o'clock it is Coola and Kilmacud Croke. So yeah, I think that's a pretty tasty one to look out for.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with Shane Walsh. I've been watching a bit, and they're obviously my new club, or newish club. So I'll be keeping a fairly keen eye on them. I thought
you said your newish club. Sorry, Shane.
Well, both to a degree.
Oh.
But I am. But the young fella joined there a year ago, so
brilliant.
I'm down there coaching the next level of Dubs, Aisling, and it's.
Oh God, Adrian.
It's a part of it that sort of obviously eats away at my soul, but it's hugely enjoyable and it's a great club.
Coach.
So yeah, the
coach.
They were the nursery last year, so whatever they are after that, they move into like the elite level of under sevens, I think it is.
Oh, that's
brilliant.
Nice.
That's great.
Are you patient?
Oh Jesus! What sort of a question was that?
What did you say? Are you patient?
Question? Yeah,
patient.
How is that his first question? Actually, do you think is there something like?
I thought you're
do you think I'm
managing
patient
young minds? Creativity's at large that age.
I asked
discipline. Where is it?
So obviously what ends up happening, there's like 120 kids that turned out last Saturday morning.
That's what I was going to ask. How many kids are there?
Big numbers, big numbers, and so there's takes a lot of managing, whatever. But we're trying to obviously put a lot of drills in place that makes it fun. It's not really like hugely skills based, specifically hurling or football skills based just yet. It's a lot of sort of fun and activities. And you basically want the kids to come down and enjoy it. That's
to come back.
What's going on. So I asked Tommy Welsh last year. I said, listen, we're doing this thing, and I knew that he was involved in his underage teams at home. So I was on to him saying, listen, have you any drills there? Because like obviously Kilkenny would be the benchmark. Like, what sort of drills are you doing with kids? And he did send me on some stuff. But before all of that, he said, listen, the main thing you have to do with that age group is if you're keeping their laces tight, that's it. Like, it's job done. There's no point in overthinking it.
There were so many times I was in Croke Park with Tommy, and we'd be coming like Leinster finals. You know, Kilkenny would be playing, and he'd be on the phone every few minutes. His under 8s would be playing, and you know, such a massive interest. This was massive, like, and his son was playing as well. So you know, he was keeping tabs on it all. And here's Kilkenny in the Leinster final, and here he is on the phone. What's scoring now? How's he doing?
It's so much fun. It is so much fun. But and like there's. So like last week, so there's like they split them up into groups. Like you might get sort of 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever it is in a group, and you try to get one parent to 2 kids if you can. So you can imagine the amount of parents that are involved at that level. But it's not. It doesn't quite work out to that exact number. But it is so much fun. It's so enjoyable. I honestly often think that I'm getting far more out of it than my young fella is. It's a great crack. And somebody's been in touch here to wonder, can we share those drills? They weren't. One of the drills was where you would put the coach would stand in the middle of a circle with the kids all around them, like maybe sort of 1 metre or 2 metres away, and they would all have balls and they would try to get them into the circle, and you'd be trying to get them out as quick as you could.
Oh yeah.
That was to try and promote that. So that was great fun. Anyway, Shane Walsh has obviously joined the club, and we're waiting for him to turn up for the nursery one of these weeks and give us a master lesson. But I have been paying attention to what they've been up to, and at some point they're going to get himself and Mannion on the pitch from the off, and they're going to be unbeatable. I was talking to somebody and they were saying that they'd be competitive. They'd be very competitive in Division 3 of the National Football League.
Yeah. Do you like people saying that? I don't know.
It probably stands to reason in a lot of ways, but particularly when you lash in like basically one of the best.
Yeah.
One of the top
Well, you have
5
to see how they play together. That's a massive thing as well. Both really big players, big performers. So how they link up together, all of that. But I'd say maybe this weekend, will this be his start? I know he spoke about not coming into the club and not expecting to be played straight away, and that's understandable, but I think he's there for a reason and he's there to play, and I'm sure he'll probably start from the off at the weekend. So yeah, that's a game to definitely look out for. Then in Meath, I have to mention Meath, the quarterfinals in the men's, what are you laughing at, Colm? In the men's senior football. My own club, Ratoath, are against Manalvi, and that's in Dunchalklin on Sunday. That's at 4:30 p.m. David Brady is the manager there, so that's a big coup.
Right.
Yeah.
Who's he managing?
Ratoath, my club.
Right, okay.
So it'll be interesting to see how they go. They're going well at the minute, so if they can go the whole way, quarterfinals this weekend, so that will be a big one. Then as well, you can catch Donegal club action. That's on TG Cahir on Sunday. Glenswilly against Nave O'Connell. That's at 2:15 p.m. TG Cahir, if you're at home, you can tune into that. And then in the hurling, it's only the first round of the Kilkenny Championship, would you believe? You'd wonder why or what's going on that you're only in round 1. Glenmore GA Club against Ballyhale Shamrock. So that's at 4:10 on TG Cahir. So yeah, tune into that one as well. And then in the LGFA, so probably my pick of that would be Breda GA Club in County Down. So they're actually in the senior and the intermediate final. So they're playing in the senior against Castlewellan, and then in the intermediate it's against Byrne, and that is in Kilcoo at 1 and 3 p.m. And the reason I mentioned that as well is because obviously a club to have a senior and intermediate teams, and the intermediate team only won the junior last year. So to go from the junior into the intermediate final, and then your senior team is in the final. They were also Ulster champions last year, so the talent is endless there. So yeah, that is one to watch out for, maybe on Twitter as well, that they're good online on down LGFA site as well. So if you wanted to watch out for those results. So yeah, lots happening.
Good stuff.
Weekend.
Good stuff. Yeah, good stuff. And where are we going, Colm? Are we?
Well, I'm.
It is handy having you here to ask these questions.
No, that's good. Yeah. No, we're always wondering, like, we're always fascinated when we look at the numbers and like where people are interested in what they consume for us, and it's like every time we do anything on Celtic, people just absolutely are fascinated by it. And we were talking pre-show. We're going to say to Aisling a lot that we're getting a Celtic update how the season's going, but we know how it's going because Ange Postecoglou is doing an amazing job from the outside looking in. But Emma made the point beforehand. It was, what about the links with Brighton? And what I'd love to know is, I presume you think that Postecoglou should stay at Celtic, but is there not a big argument to say that it would further his career if he goes to, not necessarily to Brighton, but to the Premier League, and Brighton have a really, really good squad that Graham Potter left behind? Would that actually be career progression if you take away the emotion attached with Celtic?
Is your question, is it career progression if he goes to Brighton?
It's a good question. What is his question?
Is it career progression? Well, I'm hinting that it is, but I presume that you disagree with that, but I'd love to know if you do and why you do.
Colm. Yeah, I do. I do disagree if that is the question. I don't think leaving a club as big as Celtic to go to Brighton would be further in his career. He's playing, well, he's involved with Champions League football at the minute. That's massive, and he's doing a job. Like it's building something, and every player that he signs, it's to play the Ange type of football, and you can see that from the outset. And even players that might have been there beforehand in Celtic, that maybe they're brilliant players, but they might not fit into Ange's style, and you can see what he's trying to do. And this isn't going to be a year or a few months, it's going to take time. And definitely Ange is in it for the long haul, for the next couple of years, I would say. I hope so, because everybody at Celtic does love him, the fans love him, and I would say that it's for the next couple of years, because he does want to do big things there, and you can see that he's not brought all these players in for no reason. But to go to the Premier League, of course, I'm sure if you want to be the top manager, the Premier League is where you want to go, and that's where you want to go and manage, and where maybe more money is. But I think for Ange at the moment, that he has a job to do with Celtic, he knows that, and he has his family, his kids. That's massive for him there, in the youth system in Scotland, playing in the youth system there, playing their soccer that way. So I don't think he would up and leave very easy. And I just think overall he's excited by Celtic. It's a massive club, and I don't like when people say, compared to Brighton, and no offence to Brighton, I think Celtic is a much bigger club than Brighton. Do you agree with me, or do you what way do you see it? I'm obviously a Celtic supporter.
Even if you look at some of the previous managers, like Neil Lennon left to go to Bolton at some point. Tony Mowbray left at some point. Brendan Rodgers left to go to Leicester. Like that's the. That is the route. That's what, But look, absolutely.
Well, look what happened there with Rodgers, with Leicester. It was a success.
But
not at the minute.
Until this season. Yeah.
It's an impossible argument in some ways, because you're coming from a position where you believe, because you're a Celtic supporter,
and I appreciate that
Celtic are far better than 75% of the Premier League. It's a better club to be involved with, and most of that is to do with the Champions League. And I think that's absolutely fair rationale. Obviously, particularly if you're a manager, particularly for a player, I'm sure it's a huge attraction for players to go to Celtic and Rangers, because you're going to be playing Champions League football versus involved in some sort of a battle for relegation or mid-table mediocrity, whatever the case might be. But in terms of pay and profile, I'm sure the Premier League is more attractive.
Profile, I don't know if I agree with that. Profile, some of the Celtic players have massive profile. Some of the best players have came from Celtic. You have to look at the likes of Larson, one of the biggest names in football, one of the best players, I would say, to play the game. A lot of people started their careers at Celtic, ended their careers at Celtic, and for a lot of people it's actually an aim within their career to go to Celtic. And just even the fans are something else. And obviously I know I'm a Celtic supporter, but if you have never been to Celtic Park, have you ever been?
No, I've been outside it, but not inside it.
Did you just watch the game, the Champions League game against Real Madrid? It was on TV last week.
Oh yeah,
come on, lads.
No.
What night was that? Was that Thursday night?
No, it was in Slovakia.
It was Thursday afternoon.
It was Tuesday. Last week.
Okay. Oh, Champions League.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
But Tony Cruz said something afterwards.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. So obviously a lot of players have been asked what's their favourite stadium to play in, and the likes of Messi has talked about Celtic Park. Some of the biggest players, Iniesta has mentioned Celtic Park. And after the game against Real Madrid, Celtic lost 3-0, and Tony Cruz spoke about his favourite stadium, and he said, I was being asked several times which away stadium is my favourite, and there is a new number one. I can tell you, Celtic Park. It has been just crazy. We came out and the atmosphere was good, but then the Champions League anthem came up and I thought the stadium will crash down. And then they did it again when they did the huddle. When we lined up for the team picture, I told David Alaba, when it feels like we're already 2-0 down, it's just insane. The first 20 minutes, they pressed incredibly on us and had chances. The fans pushed them even more. The fans kept going till the end. And even when we scored the third, they still were pushing the team. And then they made changes near the end and the whole stadium got off their feet. The real special thing was not only did they push their team, but also they respected us. There was no hate. I'm used to a lot over the years, but this really impressed me heavily. A great experience.
Well, that's pretty cool.
pretty cool.
I'm
You
kind
just
of
need to get
interested
to
that
Celtic
he
Park.
said that he said to David Alba, "We're 2-0 down already."
Yeah.
Jeez, you're trying to
The
spread
whistle
a
hasn't
bit of
even been blown.
positivity there. Righto, it is 8:10. You're watching OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Some great comments into us already, and do keep those coming in with the football or the tennis, whatever else it is that you're having this morning. We'd love to hear from you, and we've plenty still to come on the show. But wanted to focus a little bit on the European action from last night. First off, Sheriff 0, Manchester United 2 was the result. In that game, delighted to say Samuel Luckhurst, a writer on all things Manchester United for The Athletic, is on the line. Morning, Samuel.
Good morning. It's the Manchester Evening News, not The Athletic.
Manchester Evening News, my bad, and apologies for that. Talk to us about the game last night. Must win game, obviously, after losing to Sociedad. Sheriff, not great, but I guess job done.
Yeah, they had to win the game. They lost their first game in the Europa League 6 years ago en route to winning it, and they were a little bit up against qualifying from that group in the end because they lost 2 of their first 4 games. But although Sheriff had that, they claimed the scalp of Real Madrid last season, that squad has pretty much been gutted, so it's a very different side that United played last night. United had the benefit of a week's rest because of the postponements last week, and as Ten Hag said himself, they had a pretty bumpy start, but after that they got into their pattern of play, and it was a pretty straightforward win. And I suppose just frustrated for United that they can't really maintain that momentum in the Premier League because unlike most of the other teams in the top tier, they've got 2 postponements to contend with. So they're in this strange period now where they will go 4 weeks without playing in the Premier League.
Yeah, and back with a bang when they do come back. They're becoming obviously much more familiar with or as familiar, let's say, with the Europa League as they would have been with the Champions League over the years. Sixth time in the last 12 years that they've played in it, and there used to be a lot of conversation, Samuel, about the value of it and what sort of team selection it should be. That conversation amongst fans and players and the media seems to have disappeared a little bit. What's your sense of how dialed into the Europa League Erik ten Hag is?
Oh, he's completely invested in it. I mean, you only have to look at the 2 teams that he's picked so far. Ronaldo was starting both the games. He did rotate a bit for the Sociedad game, but that was forgivable. United had won a good run of form in the Premier League. They had a game at Palace on the Sunday that he had in mind, of course, with certain selections, and you've got to rotate in a number of games. You can't play the same team every time, and sometimes you get a better gauge of certain players' character and where they're at and how well they can perform when they're called upon all of a sudden. And the truth of the matter is there were very few performances that were worthy of note against Sociedad. I think Christian Eriksen was probably the only one who came out of that game with any credibility. But Ten Hag was a tad complacent. I mean, there were 2 almost pre-planned substitutions with Dalot and Eriksen coming off against Sociedad at half-time, which seemed strange when it was 0-0. United ended up losing 1-0 with no game this weekend. I think everybody expected him to play the strongest possible team in Moldova, and he did that, going off form and player availability. So it does maintain a little bit of momentum despite these gaps between games, and there's obviously going to be a 17-day gap now for them to contend with until the Manchester derby. But going into that game, even though that's still over a fortnight away, looking at the team last night, you would probably say there will be at the very most 2 changes, but more likely 1 change, which at the moment, provided he is fit for that game, would be Rashford for Ronaldo. On
that basis, I was almost slightly surprised to hear you say, Samuel, that Ten Hag was taking the Europa League seriously because he started Ronaldo. So is your sense that he's, on the basis even of the last couple of games, that he's getting close to that starting 11, or he's there?
Not necessarily. I think that Ten Hag does prefer the more fluid front 3 of when all are fit, which has not been the case very often at all so far this season because of Martial's injury, but it would be Sancho, Martial and Rashford, and you've got 2 of the wingers switching. Sorry, that would have been the case at the start of the season, but of course he's brought Anthony in, so Anthony's obviously the starter on the right-hand side. Sancho is pretty much the preferred pick on the left. Centre forward is interesting because Martial did have a very good pre-season, but he's only played 1 half all of the season so far, so it's not easy to see him getting his way back into the team already. With Ronaldo, some of the movements he goes upon and the positions he takes up, I think he's probably the only player in that squad who could do that, but he has been snatching at chances. He has looked a bit desperate to get off the mark this season. And it is getting to the point where it would be a slight surprise if he did start the derby, if Rashford was available, or if Rashford and Marshall were available. There's still no time frame on when Marshall will come back. But it does seem quite apparent already that Ten Hag does prefer the fluidity of Martial or Rashford up front to Ronaldo, who obviously, where he's turning 38 in February, he's not going to be as mobile as those players, but he could still end up scoring more goals than those players, because you just have to look at his record.
It felt watching them last night that things were starting to click at times, and I think Jadon Sancho was probably a big reason. He got a great goal, the first goal, and he almost had a second, but he's really on form at the minute.
He is. He's, in terms of his goals output, he had to wait until February to get his third goal last season. To have 3 in September already is very good going. He does still have a tendency to meander through games. He scored obviously against Liverpool and Leicester, and after he scored in those matches, which was relatively early in the first half of both of them, you didn't hear much from him after that. And when you're a winger, that's going to be noticeable, because there is a big onus on you to affect games, to be involved as often as possible. So he can still go quiet, but he is becoming a more consistent match winner, frankly. And it was good timing for him after the England squad announcement. He was extremely unfortunate to be overlooked for these games this month. But historically, Southgate has never really taken a shine to him. And there are reservations in the England setup when Sancho has been involved. That said, you look at Jack Grealish, who was underwhelmed for upwards of a year at Manchester City and has done next to nothing this season. That mantra that Southgate came out with 5.5 years ago, whenever it was, that he'd pick players on form rather than reputation, has completely been flipped now. There are a lot of players in that England squad who are in solely because of their reputation for what they've done for Southgate at England level. And I suppose where Sancho is performing more consistently now and Grealish is doing next to nothing, Grealish has got no hiding place now. So it is still one to keep an eye out on ahead of the World Cup squad selection. But I suppose Grealish has some credit in the bank with Southgate for some of the cameos he had at the Euros last season.
Yeah, that was something that Paul Scholes had said after the game, that he thinks that Jadon Sancho deserves a place ahead of Jack Grealish. I'm guessing that's something that you agree with?
Not necessarily ahead of, but he certainly should have been in the squad. I mean, you have to factor form into it, because I think the danger Southgate has got at the moment is that a lot of his favourites are either out of form or not playing. He's not got the courage to drop any of the right-backs. There are 4 right-backs in the squad again. That's too lopsided. The 2 left-backs are in by default, Luke Shaw and Ben Chilwell. They're not playing regularly for their clubs. It's difficult to really see them playing regularly for their clubs between now and when the World Cup squad is announced. Calvin Phillips has gone to Manchester City, and everybody thought he would be a reserve at Manchester City, and he has been. He's played something like 14 minutes this season. Grealish I think he started once in the Premier League. England are still very much dependent on Harry Kane and Raheem Sterling as their match winners. Obviously, with Harry Maguire, he's not put a foot wrong for England, but you can't ignore his situation at Manchester United. And his situation has been dire for pretty much a year now. He's been either out of form, or in the case of this season, he's been dropped altogether. The impact of Rafael Varane this season has not reflected well on Maguire at all, in that however way you look at it, it's not a coincidence United have conceded 2 goals in 495 minutes with Varane on the pitch. The 5 games he started in, they've won. The 3 games he hasn't started in, they've lost. And of course, unfortunately for Maguire, he has started in those 3 games that United have lost this season. So Southgate is taking a risk by placing reputation ahead of form with a number of players at the moment who would likely start for England in Qatar. And also he's got to probably show this month with these upcoming Nations League games that there's a willingness on his part to integrate Jude Bellingham into the starting 11, because as far as rounded midfielders go in the England squad, he is the best by far.
Yeah. Before we let you away, the obviously postponement of games and the international window means that there's a long time between drinks for United, but in all evidence, domestically in the league looking very good. And as you mentioned, October the 2nd, Man City. There was a time not that long ago where we wouldn't have given United a shake in this one, but all recent evidence, good wins over big clubs suggest that it could even be close.
It could. They've got the monster of Erling Haaland to try and slay, of course, and that's going to be a fascinating matchup between him and Varane. I mean, Varane would be the injury United fans dread the most, and unfortunately for United last season, there was an international period where he did pick up an injury, and they had a couple of horrendous defeats pretty much straight away in October against Leicester, and of course the 5-0 shellacking by Liverpool as well. So they really need Varane to stay fit over the next fortnight and be available for that game. Having Rashford back, it's strange how it has changed all of a sudden that Rashford has become integral to United this season, because he really wasn't last season. But he does complement that front three very well at the moment. And it's got to the point now with Casemiro where he's looked so cumbersome in his performances so far that McTominay has more than earned his place in the side. He may have been a bit fortunate to have been starting after Casemiro first arrived, but he has gradually improved, and he was particularly good in the Arsenal game. But Casemiro, when you look at his credits and his presence, he's still someone that they're going to have to consider for that game against City, particularly where City do play a three-man midfield, and United might have to make an adjustment there. But they're competing again. That's what they needed to become this season. I think that's been the bare minimum United fans want from Erik ten Hag's side. It's for United to become a competitive and credible force again, and start to climb their way up the ladder. And despite those two debacles against Brentford and Brighton at the start of the season, they have started to do that. And it's just a pity for them, as I said, that their momentum has subsided slightly, where they've got two postponements to contend with.
You mentioned Rafa Varane there. He's been, I think, really impressive so far. He's really solid at the back. And just listening to Den Haag speak about him yesterday and his leadership qualities, you can really see what he sees in him. And yeah, he really rates him.
It's interesting how it's developed between the two of them, in that at one point in pre-season it seemed that Varane was fourth choice centre-back, and that when we spoke to Ten Hag in Melbourne, he clarified that Lisandro Martinez was being brought in to strengthen the team rather than the squad. We put it to him with Harry Maguire, he's captain, does that make him first choice? He said it did. So before the season had even started, he'd committed himself to a first choice partnership of Maguire and Martinez. And Lindelof, I think Victor Lindelof started the 5 friendlies he was available for. So he was actually starting ahead of Varane in pre-season. So it gave this impression that Varane was actually fourth choice at United. Since the season started, of course, they had 2 dreadful results. Lindelof was injured as well. He's barely played so far this season. And Ten Hag was very decisive in actually deciding that Varane should come back into the team. I think I did the story about 5 days before the Liverpool game that he was considering dropping Maguire for Varane, when I was told it was lost. At the time, it was stronger than that. He had pretty much decided there and then that Varane would be starting that game at the expense of Maguire. And look, Varane has been known faultless. The way Ten Hag speaks about him, he described him as immense the other week, and he is really living up to that billing at the moment. And it does feel like a trick of the mind that he was very, very briefly fourth choice at centre half in pre-season. But then again, when he did first play with Martinez, which I think was in the final friendly against Vallecano, Ten Hag did say unprompted how well Varane and Martinez did as a duo. So there were signs in that final friendly that he liked what he saw from them, but he took his time to obviously put them together. And in the meantime, United had probably, the Brentford game was probably their worst performance in nearly 50 years. It really was that bad. And it's not a coincidence that Varane, looking back to last season as well, he was absent for almost all of the thrashings. I think United conceded for at least 4 goals in 6 games last season, and he was absent for 5 of them. He was, of course, absent for the Brentford game this season, where he started on the bench and only came on at half-time. And when he did come on at half-time, United actually kept a clean sheet for the second half. So his importance to United it can't be understated at the moment. He is very much their most important player.
Yeah. All right. Interesting times in Manchester. Samuel Luckhurst, Manchester Evening News. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for joining us this morning, and plenty to get our teeth into there. Eventually get his title right. Actually, it helps.
You did.
Helps set the item up. Set the item up right. All right, loads of comments coming into us on all sorts of topics, and we'll come back to those in just a little bit. It's 8:25 on this a Friday morning, and you're very welcome along to the show wherever it is you are at this morning. You're watching OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Ronan O'Gara, good morning to you.
Hey Adrian, hi Aisling.
How's it going?
Ronan.
Great. Yeah, very well, thank you.
Couple of weeks into the season, you've 2 from 2, and you have Perpignan tomorrow. Life is good.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I wouldn't be getting too carried away. We have had a better start, obviously, than last season, which wasn't too difficult. But we have a better squad this year, and the atmosphere is better. So pre-season was good. We have momentum. Changed up the team for tomorrow a little bit. So interesting to see opportunities for certain guys. And
Alton Delan, is that what you're saying?
No, Alton is he was involved against Leon, but unfortunately got a little bit of a tweak in the buttocks playing on a synthetic pitch. So we need to mind him a little bit for a week or two. But yeah, he's been good, integrated really well, very popular with the boys. Great work rate in him, and smile on his face. So really pleasant to have in the environment.
You talked about the environment and the atmosphere there a couple of times, and I was looking at it last night. You've 34 players out between retirements and departures. Was that right? But it looked like a big old number, and 10 players in. Is that right, or did I landed myself on some dodgy website that was reporting misinformation?
You've had a few too many whiskies.
It's only 8:25.
I understand we're in France, but 34, no. 14.
I was thinking that's the whole team is gone.
14, right.
And the backup.
Yeah.
They even have them listed out here. I don't know. It's yeah. Anyway, there's a bit of change around, is what we're saying. Is that fair enough to say? There's been.
Yeah, there's been kind of 14. Yeah, have left, or 14, I suppose, are not here, and recruited 7 with an emphasis on probably quality and younger players coming up. You know, I think that was the one big thing that I suppose that refreshing me was spending time with Scott Roberts from Crusaders, how he sets up young players to succeed. So I really bought into that, I think, and I remember being that young player, but then as you get older you forget it and you become the experienced player. But I think there's a definite formula for seeing the best of young players and how you can set them up. So that's very much to the fore of my mind, because you can always say next time give the advantage to the experienced player. But something I'm big on is trying to just young players don't feel pain. They don't spend time on the ground. They hop off the ground. They get up. They don't get hurt. When we older players have miles on the clock, you think about things. I think when you're under 25, you don't really think. You act first. While people who understand their bodies, I think with time and experience, they know how to manage it. But I suppose the fearlessness of youth is always a great, I think, element in your team, and you have to mix that with experience, because you can't have an OAP team. You need to mix it.
And when you're bringing in these younger players and new players, how do you go about integrating them into the team? I often wonder, is there a lot of emphasis on off the pitch stuff to get them to, I suppose, to, be comfortable in the environment? Because I'm sure pre-season is so important to get a good start to the year, because obviously things can be affected then from then on. So you want them to be able to be comfortable in the environment so that they kick on from there.
Yeah, and The big thing too is that some of this is probably over glorified or emphasised by coaches. It's quite simple in the fact that these guys have a pretty stable structure around them, that they're in the academy, they're sports, and they have to do, I suppose, college. It's obligatory in France in the academy system that they have to be doing education with their rugby to 21 years of age. So they're well looked after here in that regard. And I'm a big believer in if they have something aligned with their rugby, they have a better chance of succeeding with their rugby, because the brain, I think, works better with that distraction as opposed to all the eggs in the basket. Rugby. It just doesn't do anyone any good, and it's not sustainable. So we put a big emphasis on that. But the most important thing is that they can be themselves, whether they're 17 or 18 or 35, that the environment caters for them to be themselves. And that's, I mean, we have a very different mix here with someone like Raymond Root, who's a bundle of energy and floats around and dances to music. And then you have some very studious guys who need to be serious to be performing. But for younger players, it doesn't matter what age they have to feel themselves to be able to perform. And we try and integrate as many as possible in pre-season, but the other side of it too is that you're trying to compete and win medals on both fronts, so it is naturally quite ruthless, but you don't necessarily want them to be feeling that they have to be ruthless.
Having come so close, obviously, in the top 14 a couple of years ago, and then getting the Heineken Cup in the bank last year, I presume all of that stuff helps with that culture and mentality that you're talking about. Have you specifically sat down? I did wonder that if this was the year you put a special emphasis on the top 14 having the European title in the bank and wanting to get over the line domestically. Is that something you speak about, or is that just like, I know you'll tell me now we're going for it on all fronts, we want to win all games, but is there a special emphasis on the top 14 this year?
No, there isn't, because there's a special emphasis on the next half a day. I think that's the way I work, I think I'm very big on just, I suppose, consistency of behaviours, consistency of personality, just try and be yourself. And if the boys are self-driven, the environment is there for them, but like, I can't drive them, I can inspire them, but I can't motivate them. So I think that's very important, that's internal inside them, and I think it is in this group. At the first, I think, championship, yes, it was the first championship for these guys, but it was the first championship in the club's history, which is quite staggering when you think about it like that. But when you've knocked one over, you want to knock as many others as you can in a shorter period of time. But you got to remember, that's in my game, that's a long time away, Adrian. It's next June or May for Champions Cup, so it's futile thinking of silverware at this stage. You're just trying to, I suppose, establish what your standards are on what your players want to achieve with each other. And then the great thing about it is that we have only 80 minutes every week to show what training is training. But boys need to get excited about playing games, and that's what we do here. I think we review our games well, and then we set ourselves up to hopefully succeed the following Saturday or fail. And then there are certain learnings that you take and you become better at.
I often wondered, to be a successful team, you have to have a buy-in from the whole panel, the whole squad. And as a head coach or a manager, it must be extremely tough to keep everybody happy. How do you go about that, I suppose, with lads that aren't making the squad and things like that? Because I think you spoke about it before, that you need to have the buy-in from everyone, and I suppose everyone's not happy all the time.
Yeah, exactly, of course, Aisling. But I think, I'm fooling myself thinking of getting buy-in from everyone, that just won't happen. You're going to have 5 stragglers here and there. That's normal. It's just that you don't want these boys bringing down, I suppose, the middle tier who are uncertain. But I think after last season, sometimes actions are way more powerful than words. In Marseille, for whatever it was, 20 minutes, 20 seconds, when that whistle goes, if that doesn't stimulate you to be better, nothing will. So I can go up to the top of the room and get excited and do what I want, but the boys have tasted it now, and believe me, it tasted incredibly good, and they'll tell you that. So they have a little taste for it now, so they want to kick on.
How do they say there's always that element in a group that sorry, you're talking about the 4 or 5 who, no matter what you do, you're not going to get by, and you generally tend to spend most of your time, I suppose, with those characters. How do you manage all of that?
You make a plan, and you kind of have to, I suppose, make sure your staff is aligned and you're thinking the same, because people, assistant coaches may think differently, but if they think differently, then we're going to be split. So we have to make sure our messages are very coherent and cohesive and aligned. So what the player's hearing, not what we say, but what the player's hearing, because it's two different things. What you say to something may not be what the player hears. So that's been a good learn for me. So sometimes you finish a meeting and you ask, well, what did you hear today from your coach? And if he repeats what you think you have said to him, then that's buy-in for me. But I think it's not the same group and it's not the same team, and that's why this year is very exciting. The fact that, as you said, there's 14 got out, there's 7 got in. You think that Johan Tanga or Anton Astoy are interested in what happened in Marseille. No, they're not. They weren't there. That wasn't their time. Their time is now. So we started 2 weeks ago. We started well. We had a sticky first game, but the boys showed great character, and then we were very good last week. Well, not very good. We were good last week for 75 minutes, and then nearly, typically in our way of the world, we nearly gave away the game. So we gotta try and strive to be performing tomorrow for more than an hour, because I think for 80 minutes at this stage of the season is a little bit unrealistic. So you kind of just create mini goals with the boys, and then, but it's probably a little less serious, you think. We got some good fun guys here. Will Skelton is back tomorrow, Winnie Antonio. I think their way of how they set themselves up to perform is very interesting. They love smiling, they love laughing, they love joking, and I think once you appreciate that and you know that there are going to be giggles in the room before game, that means that they're excited.
Yeah, it's not that they're not interested, that every player is different. That might be their way of getting themselves motivated.
Yeah, that was the big thing, I suppose. When I was at Munster, we were very, very serious. I felt that. You nearly were the bold kid in school where you put your nose in the corner and don't speak to anyone, and that means I'm serious. But you go to, Fiji, or you go to the Crusaders, you go to Racing, all different ways of how people prepare to perform, because you got to remember it's sport too, and a lot of these guys in their heads think they're artists. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But once you know that, you know what buttons to push, and you leave them off, because what happens around the world isn't necessarily what happens in Ireland. So it's been fascinating just to watch that and see how people prepare to perform.
New URC season obviously about to go. Lots of change at Munster, as we know. New coaching ticket, largely new anyway, and some players out. Not quite the 34 obviously that you've lost, and a couple including Malachi Fakatoa. We had Rory O'Connor on the show during the week, and he was talking about maybe they haven't recruited in the right areas. Is there a bit of the sense of the sort of slight, not so much of a change around the personnel maybe as they would have wanted in specific areas, and that coaching ticket been changed around? Is there almost a bit of a if they're building a bit this year, that's enough, not quite a free pass, but a kind of almost a free pass season?
No, I don't think anyone would look upon it like that. I think I would be hugely optimistic, I suppose, because I know the quality of the coaching group, and I think the players get so much direction from the coaching group. I read Dennis Leamy's interview during the week, and I thought his wording and his language was very pertinent. And I know Dennis well, and he's a fascinating competitor, but he's right in the fact that Munster have to earn the right to challenge for something. We're talking about where it's probably for another day, but I thought his use of language was very apt. And they have some. Graham Rowntree would be brilliant with that group, but I think he needs help from his assistants, and he's got a great guy in Mike Prendergast, and then the Kariaku, and they've Kazi running the academy. So there's harmony there, I'd say, for the first time in a long while. And a harmonious coaching group will give direction and will shine the light for where the players need to get to, because Leinster at the minute are far superior than where Munster are at.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be an interesting season on all fronts, including for yourself as well. Catch up with you around the track. Thanks, Ronan.
Cheers, see you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Ronan.
Ronan O'Gara on the line there from France, and interesting stuff as always. It is 20 to 9. It's Friday morning. We have loads of comments coming in. We're going to come back to those in just a little bit. People stirring the pot about Celtic. Actually, it turns out we got to come back there in just a little bit.
I can't wait to hear these comments.
Coming back in. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Up next, we're going to be joined live in studio. It's going to be, I'm told here, a technical breakdown, and you know who wrote that, of Roger Federer's game by the former tennis professional Jenny Claffey. Back after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good. But this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Celebrate European Week of Sport this September at the Be Active Festival. An action-packed day out for the whole family at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Come and try new sports, fitness challenges and skill tests at Ireland's biggest sporting festival. Meet sporting legends. Check out the Inflatable Zone, Village Food Market and much more. There's something for everyone at the Be Active Festival. Saturday, September 24th at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Book your tickets now at beactivefestival.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
20 to 9, Friday morning, you're watching OTB AM, and delighted to say we're joined in the studio now by former tennis professional, OTB AM regular, Jenny Claffey. Jenny, good morning to you.
Good morning to you guys.
How's it going?
Not too bad.
In morning this morning, is that a...
Absolutely, I've just put the Kleenex away there.
Yeah. I think there's a bit of that going around around the office this morning with a few certain characters. The greatest player in the greatest time in men's tennis was a quote from Byrne Ronan in The Guardian that I read last night. Is he the GOAT? Is it a qualified GOAT?
I think it's fair to say he could be the undisputed GOAT. Looking at his tennis records, you know, he's won 20 Grand Slams, 103 career titles. He's been surpassed by Nadal and Djokovic with Grand Slams, but I think you can still consider him the greatest of all time for what he's done for the sport on and off the court. Yeah,
it's a strange one, isn't it? Just with that, because it always at some point comes back to the numbers, and it's hard to stack it up on that side, obviously. But his all-round manner and way seems to have really elevated him beyond the other two in a way that, particularly in Djokovic's case, I was trying to think of the football analogies, like there's he's probably Messi, I guess.
Yeah.
And Djokovic and Ronaldo, I'm not quite sure where it leaves Nadal, to be honest. I haven't got that far in the analogy just yet. But his general way of being seems to be a thing that definitely helps elevate him in people's mind.
Yeah, he's just a true legend, and a complete role model. And, he is the epitome of a sportsman. Like, he is, how he carried himself for the 24 years that he was playing tennis was just amazing. He obviously had his ups and downs throughout his career, but he was just such a champion. Like, if you look at him, he is somebody with elegance and grace, and he respects the game so well. And it's just hard to fault him, as I said, like his game or the person that he was. He transcends the sport, and his legacy will live on.
I think it's the off the pitch stuff it's so impressive as well. And you've obviously been there as a professional tennis player, so to do that for 24 years, you have to be, an unbelievable athlete.
Yeah, and it's also, let alone his athleticism is fantastic, and it's carried him through 24 years, which is insane. Like, a bit like Serena Williams, they've had such a long career, longevity in the sport. But off court, he's obviously looked after his body incredibly well as well, and he's just somebody, I think, over the years he was very clever with how he played his career. He picked and chose tournaments that suited him, the surface as well, but also just to make sure that his body was in tip-top shape when it came to it.
What is it from your point of view? Like, we can all sort of geek out about what a great guy he was and he did great things for tennis, but technically, what was so good about him?
Breaking down his game, his forehand was just arguably the greatest forehand in the game. His technique is so simple on the forehand side. He was able to run around his backhand a lot, and he used his forehand to dictate all of the play pretty much. His anticipation of the game was phenomenal. He'd be staying very close to the baseline and would take time away from his opponents at all times. His backhand, I would have liked to seen him play a little bit more offensively with his backhand, but he was still very solid on the backhand side. He would play with a lot of topspin, whereas his forehand he would mix it up more. He was able to hit with like more flat, more topspin and angle, so he was able to exploit all areas of the court with his forehand. And then again, his serve was just amazing too. I didn't have the fastest serve in the game, but it was just so accurate. So he was always able to point out his spots on the court. And the best thing about that was the disguise on his serve was amazing. So he would throw up the ball toss and the opponents would not be able to get a read on where it was going to be going until the last second when he'd contact the ball. You'd see by the racket angle face where it was going. So there was a breakdown. I was watching a breakdown of his serve. Like he was serving down the tee on one side and serving slice on the same side, so they were obviously two very different serves, but up until like the last split second you couldn't see where he was going with the serve. So that disguise obviously keeps your opponents guessing, and therefore he was having so much success and winning with that serve and then being able to back it up with that dominant forehand.
Yeah, you mentioned about the power there as well. I did read a quote with him at some point early in his career where he was saying like when he felt as if he was hitting the ball he could almost leave a hole in the ground, and obviously that sort of diminishes after a while. So was that smart sort of disguising of his shots, or like that sort of cute play or more technical play, was that always a part? Was he once a power game and then it morphed into something when he got a bit older, or was that always there throughout his career?
Well, sorry, also to mention his movement was amazing too, so he had that as well, like the anticipation and movement. Like he just looked like he glided around the court. It was just like, it was scary watching him. It looked like so effortless, and that's how he made the game look. But the power, he's made adaptations throughout his career on his game, because that power, you can play a power game, but he also was a serve and volleyer as well in the beginning of his career. Like when he beat Pete Sampras in Wimbledon 2001, people were looking at him going, oh, that serve and volleyer game style is still a part of the game. And then as his career progressed, then he kind of mixed things up a little bit more and then became very dominant with the forehand and playing with the power. But he did mix things up, so it wasn't just power the way he would play. He just had great tactical awareness and that flair on the court to be able, and creativity to be able to mix up his game when he needed to against different oppositions.
He was on the scene for sort of 4 or 5 years before he won his first Grand Slam, and I don't know if you can remember that time because you're younger than him, but do you remember that sort of, was there an excitement about him with people going, sort of Rory McIlroy-esque, this guy is going to sort of win a lot of Grand Slams, or was it more of a slow burner?
Yeah, when, as I mentioned there, the 2001 Wimbledon, when he beat Pete Sampras, Pete Sampras was going for his 5th, I think, Wimbledon title or something, and he beat him in I think a shocking quarter-final or something match, and then people started to talk about him then, and then there was about 18 months I think or so, or maybe another 2 years until he actually won his first Grand Slam. So there was a lot of hype there, and when he won in 2003 in Wimbledon, he broke down with Sue Barker in an interview, and I think he was kind of saying that this was the relief of the pressure and expectation that people had been putting on his shoulders. And then from there he just dominated for the next 5 years. Like he think he won 12 of the next 18 Grand Slams, which I think it's incredible. Yeah, just phenomenal what those records he had set. And that's where the argument comes in about the greatest of all time. That period of dominance he had, we had never seen before in the sport. And then from then, we then have obviously the Nadal and Djokovic, and I think he drove them on, and that's what they were obviously incredible. They are incredible athletes themselves, but with that top three, I think Federer was the one who led that and brought on those guys as standard.
And just speaking of Nadal, it was so nice to hear what he said in response to the statement that he was retiring. So he said that he was his friend first and then rival, and that he wished this day would never come. So to have that friendship when they also have been so competitive through the years as well is so nice to see, and it's a testament then to Federer too.
Absolutely, like it's a complete testament to Federer and all the outpour of affection from all of the tennis players. Obviously the universe love Federer as well, but from all the professional tennis players, if you see on Twitter or on Instagram, there's all these testaments to Federer of how he changed the sport and how he was their idol, and he's such a role model and his legacy will live on. And like it's amazing that he has touched so many of his fellow competitors. Normally you go out there and it's a dog eat dog, but these guys, he's just so lovable, and he did, as I said, he transcends the sport. It's not just his tennis, but off court he's just this really underwhelmingly normal guy, and I think people can relate to him, and that's what's made him so popular, as well as his incredible tennis.
And his lovely jumpers.
Oh no, that was terrible. That jacket in Wimbledon. He'll never live that down.
It definitely has something like the Liverpool Spice Boys about it for sure. So you mentioned the 12 from 18, and then obviously I mean, maybe perfectly understandably, things start to slow down a bit at that point. It's very difficult to maintain that rate, and particularly the arrival of the two lads. And we were just discussing before we came on air here, Colin was pointing out that the Nadal and Djokovic both had winning records against him. Why is that?
Yeah, over time, I think that those records obviously worked in their favour. In the beginning, Federer was the more dominant over the two guys. If you look at the two players like Nadal and Federer had a lot of battles, obviously, over the years, but on clay court, Nadal was pretty much always the favourite. So I want to blame that as the reason why he has a more winning record. Like, his record is a little bit bigger. I think it's 25-16 or something like that, or it's more than that, I think. But
24-16.
24-16. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to look at those stats and see what surfaces they were on, because Nadal was so dominant. He's the king of clay. So how many of those were on clay versus on a hard or grass court? And then Djokovic, they've had played more matches than that. It's closer to those 27 to 24.
23, yeah.
23, okay. Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at the games, as I said, I feel like Federer has raised their games, how good they are. He had to, because if they wanted to catch him, they had to improve the elements in their games. Like, they're very different styles. Like, if you look at Federer and Nadal, it's like the warrior versus like this just legend of the sport. They're just very different how they play, so the matchup is very different. Whereas Djokovic plays a little bit more similar to Federer in the way that he plays. Like, he plays quite aggressively. He's up on the baseline as well, tries to dictate the points, tries to take time away from the opponent. So they're quite more of a similar matchup. Very different characters, but similar game styles. But over the years, I think Djokovic has managed to figure out ways to beat Federer. So I think they've managed to find a hole in his backhand, particularly Nadal, because Nadal plays this very heavy topspin left-handed forehand high into the Federer, one-handed backhand. So it's very tricky for him to step in and take that early, especially on clay courts, because the idea behind Nadal doing that is to push your opponents back, and Federer likes to play close to the baseline and dictate. So he was always playing at the ball higher than he'd like, and he wasn't able to dominate as much on that side. And then with Djokovic as well, I think he physically in some of the matches outlasted him. He had to learn to be so defensively strong, because Federer liked to dictate and play offensively. Djokovic had to learn then to play very defensively. And if you look at him, he's an incredible athlete. Djokovic on the court, he picks up every ball and can play from every area on the court. So I think in more recent years they had the upper hand on him, but in the beginning he was the man, Federer.
And even all those examples that you're saying, like, he drove them on to get better, to improve their game in order to beat him. And it's so important, I feel, in sport to have people like him, like Serena Williams as well. You know, you have that person who drives tennis on, really. So yeah, it's a lot of thanks to him for where tennis is even now at the moment.
Yeah, hugely. Like, thank you to Roger, you know, but also for, like, you know, bringing up the profile of tennis, like, worldwide. You know, so many people tuned in to watch tennis because of Roger Federer in those early days. You know, it grew huge traction, and then these rivalries, amazing rivalries, began between those top three guys. You know, Murray had a bit of a look in, but not really. You know, it was really Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, those three. These are the guys that would draw the crowds at tournaments. Like, ticket sales went up once Federer was playing in tournaments. He just grew this amazing fan base from all around the world. And as I said, then he grew up the profile of tennis, which has been amazing for the sport here and abroad.
He does come across as that, like, really sort of nice guy, and it does. I was reading a couple of pieces last night. One of them about, like, he had this mad temper when he was younger, and he had to smash the racket at one point and ended up having to clean the toilet or something. It seems like the most non-Roger Federer thing that I've ever heard, that he actually managed to almost get on top of that at some point, and because there was never any evidence of that, I don't think. Was there once he...
There were, yeah, he definitely had there's a few videos going around. He definitely had a bit of a temper as a kid, and would actually openly talk about that and how he had to learn to manage that. Like, he'd be breaking tennis rackets at 10 years old. You know, there's videos of him, I think, like, as a little kid doing that. But there has been, over the years, disputes with umpires and whatnot, but he always seemed to maintain his cool, collected character that he has. But, you know, that's something that can be learned, you know, because I have to say, in my own experience, I had a fierce temper as a kid as well.
Had you? Yeah.
Yeah, the first time I broke a tennis racket, my mum said, listen, you have to buy your own one next.
Right.
Like, so I had no tennis racket, so I had to work. I think I was working in her summer camps. I'm 10 years old, to try and buy another tennis racket. I never broke another one since.
Why did you break it?
I lost a point or something. I hated losing.
Right.
Yeah, I'm never surprised when you hear about Federer when he was younger that that's the way he was. I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised by that because he's such a fierce competitor, and obviously we see what he's done, so you'd expect him to almost have that in him. And then obviously as you get older, you have more experience and you manage that as you go. So I wasn't surprised whatsoever to hear that. I think a lot of the greats would be like that.
Yeah, but especially in an individual sport, it's all on you. So like your frustration has to come out some way, and like the racket is an easy target. But a really interesting fact about that actually is, as a kid, as I said, I had like quite a temper or whatnot. But I remember moving to Holland for a summer to attend these summer camps, and my coach came with me, and she said to the coach over there, she's like, now she's got a bit of a temper, so I apologise in advance. And this, I'm like 11 at this time or whatnot. And the coach turns to her and says, that's great, you can't teach that. That's fire in the belly. Right. You can't teach that to kids. We can tone it down and train it and try and express it in another way, but you can't teach that will to win and that that innate drive to be the best. So that served me, and obviously served him a bit better than it did me.
Listen, you did okay, you did all right. We can't be waking up every morning comparing all of ourselves to Roger Federer. It's not
we'd never feel good about ourselves.
There was another piece last night, just it was him talking to this reporter about Messi. He seemed to be sort of obsessed with Messi almost, and he was talking about when Messi gets the ball and the three range of shots. There are the three options that he has, whether it's like the pass, the shoot, or the run, I guess. And it led to a conversation about Roger Federer and the 20 options that he had as his forehand options, 20 forehand options. Is that a lot?
Is 20 options a lot? Yeah. Well, of course, that's a huge amount. As I mentioned, he can hit with power, he can hit with spin, he can hit the angles, he can hit down. It's the direction. You can just do so much. And if you look at tennis as a sport, it's amazing. You have to have this incredible physical ability as well as this technical ability. So it's quite multifaceted. And then you also have to play on different surfaces. No other sport in the world, they change the surface for the athletes to play on. So 20 options is quite a lot, and it's probably accurate, as I said, where you can put the ball on the court, there are that many options. And he was just so good at putting them in each of those 20.
What is he going to do? Is punditry going to be a thing? Is he going to get involved in the media? Is he going to disappear into the limelight and make jumpers for the rest of his life?
He won't make much bigger than that.
The market will be niche.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to see him in the game in the coming years.
Right.
He did his ending piece it was something like, I'll never leave you. He said, tennis, I love you, and I'll never leave you. I can't see him turning into a coach. I don't see that for him. He might do a little bit of punditry and commentary. I'd say that might be where we will see him again, but I'd say he'll take some time off. Obviously, he hasn't been around for the last few years as such, with injuries and whatnot. But I think he might be, have a bit of 2 cents to add to some commentary somewhere. Maybe OTB,
well, listen, we're not in the market at the minute anyway.
All right.
Let's just put that in. I mean, if he wants to call us, who knows? He just seems like such a, maybe I'm overstating it, but he's almost seems too nice to be a pundit in the way that he'd have to be in there commentating, like you mentioned about Nadal. We've become great pals, we're not really rivals. If he's to be in there critiquing some of these people who are his friends, it's hard to see him be that sort of cutting pundit almost.
Yeah, that's why I kind of find it a struggle to see a place for him in tennis. He may continue on the players or the council, he'll have some involvement in the sport. Yeah. I just don't think he'll be front and centre of it. But he did say, it's over, but it's not over basically. So we will see him in some capacity, but I can't see him going into a role like a day-to-day job. I don't think he needs the money anyway, so he'll have to do something, obviously, and I think he loves the sport, and that was really evident through his whole career. He loves the sport, so it'll be hard for him to walk away, so hopefully we'll see him in some capacity. Yeah, I know the tennis world is mourning today, so commiserations and house private please and all that sort of stuff. It's I'm sure there'll be plenty more post-mortem said about him as well over the next while. Thanks a million for coming in, Jenny. Thanks guys.
Enjoyed that. Pick over Roger Federer's career. It's almost 9 o'clock. You're watching OTB AM. We're going to get to all the comments that have been coming in. We've Alan Quinlan lined up as well. He's going to talk all things URC and plenty more as well. Some reaction to that Ireland emerging squad. But before all that, on to last night's news round. Will, Richie and Mick paid tribute to the great Eddie Butler, the brilliant BBC commentator, after the tragic news yesterday of his passing, and we'll take a look at that now.
There's a beautiful lyricism about his voice. You can still hear the fact he'd be talking about someone coming over the top in a ruck, but at the same time he can talk beautifully about nationalism and Franco at the same time.
Yeah, that, like, he could have read a phone book and I could have listened to it, to be honest with you. Just an incredible voice. There's an authority to his voice without a crumb of condescension, which is an incredible thing to possess. And there's also like a deep sadness when someone like Eddie Butler passes away, because people who call sports for so long, and obviously his playing days were probably before a lot of our times. But for people who kind of call major sporting events and call them so well for a prolonged period of time, there's a constancy there that outlasts even a lot of the people that will be involved in those sporting events. And so to lose one of those voices, and at the age of just 65 as well, when in that interview too, he had spoken about what comes next, and he never kept any trinkets or anything to do with his career or any notes or anything like that, because you discard it, you move on to the next thing, because the next thing that comes along is going to be better. The next year is going to be better. And it's really difficult to comprehend that for him that's not going to be the case. But just an incredible loss. He gave so much to the sports that he loved, so much to sport in general. And God, he'd be missed across many, many fronts.
That's Richie on the show last night, and you'd have to endorse all of that. He was an absolutely brilliant commentator and very much of his time. It is 9 o'clock and you're watching OTB AM. We've Alan Quinlan standing by, who's going to talk all things rugby in just a couple of moments' time. A few comments though before all of that. We've Colm O'Connor, who's been in touch on Twitter this morning. He says, snobbery. This is in relation to my point at the top of the show, that I really felt that the commentary in relation to Todd Bowley's comments had been dripping with snobbery, which had reached its pinnacle on Paramount with Jamie Carragher and friends. Snobbery to some extent, says Colm here, for sure, and insecurities. Same attitude exists in some parts of states towards soccer. Works both ways. Enda Lynch says that Thierry Henry's point, and a poor one that feeds your snobbery point, is that Todd uses the words, maybe they could learn a few things from US sport. Henry was of the view, who are they to teach us anything? Daft, says Enda. Good morning to you, Enda. What else have we got in here? I feel Carragher's point was because Todd Bowley implied that the Premier League has lessons to learn from the US sports, and Carragher thought that he was talking down to the Premier League. Henry was typical Henry with his groans.
Yeah, I think definitely on the point of the soccer in America, that is so true, because it's either the American football or maybe athletics, things like that, but soccer is really like looked down on, I feel, at times over there. What else have we got here? Finally, someone that plays tennis for me. Poor Cullum, says Danny Mack. Danny Mack feature getting squeezed, Cullum. So, I mean, you're the producer of the show. You'll ultimately, where do we go from here? It'll be your decision. Villa could be available soon, which would be a step up from the SPL. Somebody on YouTube, I'm throwing that over there, Aisling, in a way that I'm going to also Ange
duck over this way. I would assume that's the inference.
Yeah, no. I couldn't see it happening, not for a couple of years. As I said, I've there's no illusion that he might end up going to the Premier League, but even Villa, I think Celtic are a bigger club.
Villa would be, I could see how Villa would be very attractive in the sense that obviously it is a big club. It sits outside the top, I don't know, 4 or 6 clubs, whatever, in the Premier League. But beyond that, in terms of tradition and size and fan base, I mean, even location to a degree, would be a very attractive job. What would Ange Postecoglou have to achieve at Celtic to be linked with a United or a City or whatever? It doesn't feel like he's in the conversation for those jobs at the minute. Now look at the Graham Potter thing happened, and that's maybe slightly surprising in some way, and there might be a lot of comparisons there. So who knows? I'm certainly not saying that he wouldn't be able to take on a gig like that. You would think that actually the trajectory he's on at the minute, that might be absolutely in his radar. But beneath that, Villa would feel like one of those jobs that is probably he will be linked with if and I think quite soon when it becomes available.
I don't think the time is right is probably the big thing at the minute, but I think for Ange, what does he need to do? Well, I think from where the club was and what he has done in this short period of time that he's had these players, he's only had really a full pre-season with them this year, and to see the type of football they're playing, the type of play they're playing, the environment that they're in, they all buy into what he's saying, and they all have that winning mentality, and they know what Celtic's about. So yeah, I think he needs to win everything really in Scotland this year, just with the team, not to go elsewhere. He needs to win because the team and the talent that he has there is, I don't want to say is it the best Irish Celtic team. We have to wait and see, but it definitely has the fruits to be. Like if you look at some of the players like Jada, Kyogo, they're world class players, and I don't say that lightly. Like I honestly do believe it, and I think we'll see a lot of them to come in the years to come. But for Ange, I think he's going to want to win everything in Scotland, and he's going to want to have a say within the Champions League. I think he's going to want to be playing football in Europe after Christmas. They definitely want to put up a better performance against Real Madrid when they have to go to Real. That's going to be tough. And in the next 2 games, they really need to get performances and wins. They just need to be clinical, because that's been the problem. Like in the last game especially, like they had so many chances. They had 16 shots, 6 on target. And yeah, Shakhtar Donetsk had 5 shots, 2 on target, and they came away with a draw. So it's just to be that bit clinical. But these things don't happen overnight. Where we were talking to Ronan O'Gara there, like it's building. You know, you have to build these things. You know, things take time. You're bringing new players in. Everybody has to buy into the system. It doesn't just happen overnight in a few months. And you can see that it's slowly starting to happen. And yeah, I don't think Ange is going to be leaving Celtic anytime soon.
Or you hope you won't. They were really good against Real Madrid. I've just remembered, I absolutely did watch that game, and they were really good against Real Madrid.
Especially the first half.
And it was almost against the run of play when Madrid scored.
Yeah.
And then suddenly
and things opened up.
It opened up a bit, and it's hard to judge. No more than the Roger Federer point, it's hard to judge any team against a team like Real Madrid, because they're in absolute elite air. But they were really good and looked very good. I'm not saying that in any. They were very good. Enda says Roger's excuse for leaving Celtic was that they wouldn't spend to help him get further in Europe. Ange kept in budget and is doing well in Europe so far. Some managers need money to do their job. Of course, it's progression for Big Ange, like it was for Brendan Rodgers, says Conor Costello. Celtic fans can never see that, though, and you become public enemy number 1. And Maguire Sam says, give it to those cheerleaders, Aisling. Snobbery about the EPL is insane.
Oh, I said that I do think eventually he may go. It is a jump up. But at the moment, with the likes of Brighton and Villa, I actually genuinely think that Celtic's a bigger club. That's my view.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair. And you're on the record.
I'm on the record, I know. About 3 times now.
Right, here you are watching OTB AM. It's after 9 o'clock, and good morning to you wherever it is you're watching us this morning. Loads of great comments coming into us there about the tennis and the football and all sorts, so do keep them coming in between now and 10. We're brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day, and here's what's happening on OTB Sports Radio over the course of the day. 11:30 this morning will be football kick-off. It'll be Ger, it'll be Cullum, and it'll be guest Clive Allen today, who Cullum famously went to meet at Tottenham a few weeks ago, and then Clive never turned up. I mean, yeah, exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
Wow.
He was making such a big deal about it. He was like, he had everybody never mind about the office, in the entire building told about his trip to Tottenham and how Clive Allen wanted to meet up with him, and then, you know.
Oh my God, he's in my ear here saying that everything you're saying is untrue.
It just never happened. OTB Gold at 1 o'clock. Joe chats to Ruby Walsh. We've Mount Rushmore. It's the Dublin Mount Rushmore then at 3 today. 4 o'clock, Alan Keane is in the hot seat for the League of Ireland Legend chat, and then an Irish football special with Given, Quinn, McAteer, all in conversation with Kevin Caban. That is at 6 o'clock. And also to mention as well that you can follow OTB across all of our social channels. Subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for all the very latest and best in latest sports content as well. The WSL finally gets underway this weekend. Obviously it was delayed with a lot of the stuff last weekend, and they're going straight in with round 2. So they'll come back to round 1 again, but they're straight in with round 2. And I believe that the game tonight between Arsenal and Brighton, 7:30 kickoff, isn't going to be televised, which is...
Yeah,
I mean, look, I know it's a function of all the madness that's gone on over there, but God, it's such a shame, like, because the opportunity to get in early in the season, a team like Arsenal, who we're obviously very interested in, along with some of the other ones, but just a chance to get it on TV and
absolutely, like, and even the hype, and the hype around the Euros, like, you know, just to continue that on, because I think we're at a place now where women's football is in a really good place. So, you know, to be getting these games, which there's a lot of hype around Arsenal, you know, Brighton too, but people are wondering what Arsenal are going to do this year. I think they lost only by a point last year. You know, it was unfortunate. So, there's a lot of exciting times there. So I think everybody would have liked to tune in, and even from an Irish perspective, obviously, we've Katie McCabe, and she's doing fantastic stuff at the minute. So you'd be wanting to tune in to see that.
Yeah, there's so many of those teams with Irish interest that it is going to be a watch for us. It is disappointing it's not on the TV. TV. Like there was even, was it last weekend? Was it last Saturday night? It was Piedmont against Shelbourne on TG Carr, and I ended up tuning into it, and it was a great watch. And they were talking about the sponge driocht. The magic sponge.
Oh, right. My Irish is great, obviously, as you can see.
Listen, I'm with you on that one. But yeah, anyway, there's other fixtures obviously this weekend. You have Villa City on Sunday lunchtime, Leicester Tottenham Sunday afternoon. You've United Reading tomorrow, West Ham Everton on Sunday, and Liverpool Chelsea is going to be, I'd say it's going to be a belter. Chelsea will be hot favourites to win that, but there's so much Irish interest at Liverpool that Sunday evening at 5 o'clock as well. So,
and Jess Sue is going to be making her debut for Aston Villa as well, so that's really exciting. 20-year-old from Finglas. So yeah, we'll be watching out for that. I'm really excited for her. She said her whole family is going to be heading over for the game as well. So yeah, exciting times.
The next Katie McCabe, she was described on the Koi Gig pod before the might have been before the Finland game, which is, it's.
And then in the Slovakia game, you could see like she was dangerous up that wing, and she's just so smart on the ball for the age she is as well. She was always doing the right thing. You know, she got into trouble, she turned back, and she linked so well with Katie. Yeah. And I spoke to Katie McCabe about that after the game, of how well she linked up with Jess, and like her face lit up when I mentioned Jess, and she was like, I'm so happy for Jess. Like, I'm so happy that Jess has had this big performance. She got player of the match as well that day. And yeah, I think there is really big things to come from Jess Sue. We've seen it through the years that she was always up and coming. She was one to watch, but it feels like she's just really coming onto the scene now, and she's been in that professional environment in Aston Villa, and that was a big step up going from Shelbourne. And yeah, she's loving it over there. So yeah, I think she's definitely one of these players who could be, as you said, maybe the next Katie McCabe.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't say it, I'm just re-quoting somebody else. If it turns out that she is, then I'm happy to jump on board. And by the way, of course, to mention as well that Shamrock Rovers' job, and it's across a lot of the back pages this morning, has become very difficult after that 3-0 defeat in Ghent last night. They were 2-0 down at half-time, and yeah, it becomes, they again, no more than the Celtic point previously in their opening game, showed real sort of intent and looked absolutely at ease with the game. They didn't manage to get a point out of that, obviously, but the defeat last night leaves them very much up against it now as well. That was Rovers losing in Ghent last night.
Probably playing those games consistently at that level is probably what it is. But just to mention as well, the WSL, you can actually catch those games on the FA Player, so tune into that to catch them.
There you go, good stuff. You can't watch it. It's after 9:10 now. We've Alan Quinlan standing by, and he's up after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Your goalkeeping coach is your god.
The transfer window is closed, but the Koi Gig pod has made a new signing.
People wanted to come to Man City, and now everyone wants to go to Barca. So why wouldn't you want to go there? Let's be honest.
Friend of the pod, Emma Byrne, is joining Kathleen and Karen this season.
Everyone was so buzzing.
Keep up to date with all the WSL action every Tuesday, and subscribe to the feed in the OTB Sports app now.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh, really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie, we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. Because somewhere out there, there's someone for you. And GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good. But this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies. Used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It is 13 minutes past 9. You're watching, did that come out? It's 30 minutes past 9. You're watching OTB AM, and I'd say that Alan Quinlan joins us in studio. Morning, Quinny.
Morning, guys. How are you?
Good. I see Gareth Brooks was down at training in Munster during the week.
I see that. A surprise visit.
The bootcut jeans were out, and the Yeah, they're never too far from Munster players down there, I'm sure, anyway.
No, I would have liked to meet him myself.
Well, have you been at a gig?
No, I haven't actually, no. Staying away from crowds.
No interest?
No.
Adrian's looking for tickets.
Yeah, I'm still on the search. I'm not. Put it out there. Loads of rugby to talk about. There was one headline that grabbed my attention this morning. It's in the back of the page of the Irish Independent. First, concerned by lack of communication over Ireland tour. And effectively, his point, so this is like an emerging Ireland tour, and his point is that it's not so much, it doesn't feel so much like an emerging Ireland squad as in the next layer of players beneath that the touring party would be New Zealand or a Six Nations squad. He's saying it's not that level that you would want to be looking at those players. He's saying it's a level, at least one, if not two, below that. He's wondering if it's almost an emerging academy squad and basically questioning the value of it.
Yeah, I suppose he has some merits in what he's saying. I think if you asked any of the provinces, would they want, I think Leinster have 11, is it 10 from Munster, 8 from Ulster, and 5 or something from, I might have my numbers wrong, but there's a good few obviously from each of the provinces. Connacht have 5, but I'm sure none of them want to lose the players throughout that period. They're possibly missing two URC games, but we've always had this situation, Adrian, where we're kind of looking for something different in preparation for World Cups. Obviously, if you go through all the names, will there be players in that 35-man squad who'll get into Andy Farrell's squad next year? Well, maybe not. A few definitely have a chance. The ones that stick out are Robert Balakoon, Kieran Frawley, someone like Nathan Doak could really make a push. But Fez what he's saying is, yeah, for sure that a lot of these guys are not actually starting. If there was URC, a big URC game or knockout URC game or a European game, would many of these guys be starting? No, probably not.
It almost feels like they're building for a World Cup beyond the next one.
Well, you might, if you got a couple out of it, and we look back next year and say, well, it worked and it was part of the success. I think the big plus about going away on tour, and I've said this about the women's tour to Japan, there's huge benefits from being together as a group, learning about the dynamics of being an international player, preparation, the quality of training, the intensity, the calls, all that kind of stuff. I've always kind of been an advocate for younger players being brought into Six Nations squads or November squads to train with the best players and the guys who are on top of their game. So you don't have the same situation here where you've half and half, a lot of experience, and then you bring in young players. But look, we'll wait and see. I think it probably, as I said, doesn't suit all the provinces, and but I don't know. I think, look, the communication, I think they probably would have been told this a while back that this was happening. It was kind of blind. We were all blindsided by a little bit. But if it brings the players on and it's beneficial, well then so be it. But look, it's kind of hard to disagree with Fez in what he's saying, but I do think that, I just think of the World Cup all the time. We're thinking, how can we do things different? I came back from the World Cup in 19 and we were thinking, pick players abroad, maybe they come back with different ideas, do things a little bit differently. So this is a different type of tour. It's a unique situation, and there's a lot of players in that squad who I believe will be regular international players. Some of the young players who were on the 20s last year, I think that can be really beneficial for them. And you get a chance to work with the coaches really closely. So I think, the impact of Paul O'Connell with some of those forwards, and just seeing his approach, his mentality and stuff like that can only bring guys on. So maybe the provinces will get back a better player when they come back from this three-week tour. We're not really sure, when in the games they'll play. They're going to be very physical anyway, playing the games over there. But hopefully it's beneficial, but it is a little bit risky for sure.
Yeah, in the press conference we were asking Simon Easterby just about how you came about picking these players, and he said there was a lot of dialogue with the clubs and that some players that they might have picked they actually thought maybe will benefit better from being with their clubs at the
Playing
moment.
matches, yeah.
And then some of the players that we've picked, we need to see, are they okay in this situation? Are they able to step up to this level? So they want to see them in around the environment of the international, of the Ireland team.
Yeah, they wouldn't have completely blindsided the provincial coaches, because they all work together and communicate. So they wouldn't have just gone, well, we're taking this number of players, like it or lump it. I'd say there might have been a bit of horse trading for one or two guys and said, look, this guy really needs to go to the next level. Someone like Dermot Byrne, I don't want to be isolating players, but, he's a very exciting young player in Munster. He's still pretty young, but he hasn't got that taste of what it's like to get up to the next level and maybe... So I think looking at the names and going through the list, Adrian, they would have said, all these guys are potential internationals in the future. And I get what Fez is saying about, playing A games, but being away on tour, you can get a really close look at guys, their mentality, their body language, their attitude. Have they got leadership qualities to develop? So I think it'll be beneficial from that point of view. And I think the provinces will be fine. They all have big squads. It's not as if they're completely stripped of all their players. They'll still have decent teams for those matches while they're away.
Simon was asked as well, just about the November series. Would some of these players feature? And he said the plan is to look at players that they might feature, which I thought was maybe a little bit surprising. As you said, I thought it was maybe something for the future, but he said, yeah, maybe.
I think there's a handful in there, definitely, who could easily... Max Deegan has played before. He's a superb player. You could put him in against South Africa, Australia now, and you'd be confident that he can perform there. Alex Kendellen from Munster again, played so well last year. It'll benefit him being in around that scene as well. Okay, it's different, and people can say, well, this is a totally different situation and playing a big test match. Joe McCarthy, Scott Penny has the ability. Cian Prendergast was on the New Zealand tour. Roman Salano in there, and this is probably one you're going to ask me about Munster. The tight head situation there. There's obviously a lot of promise with him, but he has to kind of take hold now, learn how to really kind of manage his body himself, and hopefully take that next step up. Incredibly powerful.
Are they a bit light in that department? Rory O'Connor was on during the week, because it's a good segue into the start of the URC obviously this weekend, and they're in action on Saturday afternoon. What, in terms of like Munster, his point was like that they obviously Fekitoa is a big sort of name recruitment or whatever, but that Roundtree wasn't as involved maybe as he might have liked in the recruitment to start off with, and that secondly they're very light in that front row area particularly.
Yeah, they are light in that front row area, and I think if you, and that's the concern. I think Connacht were in the market for a tight head. Munster would love to have brought in a top quality international tight head and go out with the checkbook and fill these gaps. I think the RFU were probably saying, look, Kenyon Knox, Roman Salano, let's see what they have this year, and if they don't make it, then but I think, obviously if you're coming up against, like in that Toulouse game where the scrum creaked and the front row was under so much pressure, and Toulouse are bringing on an international front row to replace the already international front row that started the game. It's difficult. It's difficult if
and
you're trying to win European Cups.
And they've done nothing to really address that.
No, they probably haven't been allowed, Adrian, and that's the reality. So, you can be criticise it, but I think there is, maybe if we see more of Kenyon Knox and Roman Salanoa, Stephen Archer is obviously there, and James French, maybe we just need to see more of them, and hopefully that they get a run of games. Roman Salanoa has had a lot of injuries. The potential is there. Kenyon Knox is a really good rugby player as well. You'll only find out more about these guys when they play games regularly, so they've got to get regular game time, I think, to see them. But of course it's an issue, and it's a challenge for them, and you can't, it's not like Premiership soccer. You can go out and just sign players and fill gaps and spend money, and I think they're restricted, and the RFU want to develop these two guys. They're both Irish qualified, so if you bring in an international overseas player, well, they get less games then. But then it begs the question, are they good enough? Are they good enough in that big game? Well, we'll find out more this year. I think they need a little bit of luck, Munster, with those two guys. They obviously need a little bit of luck with ROG Snyman. If he comes back and plays regularly for him,
be a huge boost.
Well, he's a game changer, isn't he? And if he plays regularly, he can make such a big impact. So on the balance of it, if you kind of go back five and back line, they look like they've a lot of good players, and if they change the way they play and use their skill set a little bit more and develop their skill set, well, they'll be thereabouts. But the reality is, the big crunch games will be a little bit short up front. We'll wait and see.
Will Munster fans give them a bit of slack this season, do you think, in the sense of obviously the changes in the coaching front and a bit of building going on there? Ronan was on earlier on and he was saying that there's a great sense of cohesion maybe in a way that there hasn't been previously for whatever reason, but given the backroom staff. So given that's happened, and for whatever reason they haven't really brought in maybe a huge number of players, will Munster fans give them a bit of a free pass no matter what happens this season, or is there still an expectation of...
Well, I don't think you completely get a free pass, and I think Andy Kyriakou, Dennis Leamy, Mike Prendergast and Graham Rowntree and the rest of the coaches that are there will know there's pressure. There's pressure in that job, and there is expectation, and I think what Munster fans will want to see is a bit of bite, enthusiasm to try and play. Is that going to work every time? No, it's not. You have to be pragmatic. Sometimes, depending on the weather, if you get ahead in games, how you manage games and stuff like that. So I think, they want to see fight. They want to see ambition a little bit to try and play. And I said this during the week, the game that jumps out is that Connacht game last December up in the sports ground. That was the one that kind of was a pivotal kind of turning point for people and brought on a lot of frustration with, Munster passing the ball 45 times in the game. I know the conditions were dreadful, but Connacht should have won that game by a lot more, and I think that frustrates people. You contrast that to coming out of the Aviva after the Toulouse game, and Munster lost the game on penalties. But people were like, there's no one under any illusions, Adrian, that they're going to win a European Cup and that they should. I think people realise that, and that's where the patience will come in as regards that expectation. But they want to see some ambition, and more fight, and the players expressing themselves a little bit more. So the game plan under Johan Van Gran and Stephen Larkham, we could play that game back in 2006 because we had an international pack of forwards where we could tuck the ball up the jumper and just wear down the opposition. And that was the reality of it. We were probably more forward orientated then. Where, you had a 9 and 10 in strings and ROG who could just keep the ball in front of you. It was on a play to them a lot of the time. 2008 was different. We had Dougie Howlett, Maffey, Tupoki. We were able to play it differently, but you kind of have to cut your cloth according to your measure, and I think Munster were trying to play that a little bit forward orientated in the last couple of seasons and maybe just didn't have that killer punch. So I think they've got to find a different way, be more energetic in their play and dynamic, and trying to obviously retain the ball but play at a high intensity, and I think that'll be the challenge. So there does need to be patience. I think it's 11 years now since Munster have won a trophy, and I think after that win in 2011, that league win against Leinster in Thomond Park, I think, would you have kind of gone, well, Munster in 11 years' time we'll be chatting, and Munster won't have won a trophy since. Now they've won a couple of finals and they were close enough in Europe. So there does need to be patience, but I still think we need to see improvements as we go along.
Yeah. So, what's successful? Silverware at the end of the year or seeing improvement? Because I do agree as well, patience. Anytime any new head coach or new management come in to any team, you have to give it time to build, because I don't think it's even a 3-4 month thing. I think it's going to take quite a while. It's
different coaches, different voices, and I think what Prendy and Dennis Leamy will bring and on the way they want to try and implement and improve the skill set. I think Munster have struggled to play at a high tempo, high intensity, and really execute when you get into multi-phase. I think that's what they will try and do. And we've seen glimpses of it. And I said this a few times. It's you don't want to be kind of really over-critical of the previous regime, because I think the players have to take responsibility as well. At times, you're out in the field and, there's plenty of leaders there. What's a realistic return, Aisling? I think being in knockout rugby, I think you have to kind of be in the knockout stages of Europe and of in the URC, and then you kind of get in a position where if they get things right on the day and they have a bit of luck and they're not missing a couple of their big players, well, then they can have a rattle off a team, and you'd never know. You will never know if you're not there, and I think that's where they have to be. The South Africans coming into the URC has changed the dynamic, and just look at Connacht last year. They finished 11th, missing out in Europe, not getting into the playoffs. There was 3 South Africans in that group at the top, so they're going to be they've changed the dynamic of the league for the better, I think. So I think it makes it more exciting, the league this year, and Leinster are obviously overwhelming favourites again, and rightly so, but you have to have a lot of depth in your squad to be fighting on both fronts. And you just look how good Leinster were last year, or look at the squad they have, and they lost the final and the semi-final. On another day they could have won both those trophies.
We shouldn't forget that Munster are actually second favourites to win the thing. So I think I've been overstating that aspect of it. Talk to us about Connacht, will you? Because they obviously have let go a few. They've brought in a few Leinster heads, Adam Byrne, Hawkshaw, Peter Dooley, and then the switches again, like in the back room with Andy Friend. Obviously, I don't know, is it a move up or whatever it is?
Yeah,
but
director of rugby.
Yeah, I still think Andy Friend is going to be overseeing everything, and Peter Wilkins obviously with Ireland.
There's a bit of Rasmus about it almost.
Yeah, probably, and I think they just look at the dynamic of he probably wants to oversee everything and develop the coaches more with Mossy Lawler, and he's gone in as attack coach, and Collie Tucker do more with the forwards, Peter Wilkinson, and maybe just gives him a little bit of a chance to oversee training from a little bit of a distance. I'm sure he'll still be involved.
That's it. He said, I was talking to him during the week, and he spoke about it's knowing what your weapon is. And he said, I know what mine is. I know I'm good with players, man management, speaking to them. And he said he went around the whole coaching team and said, okay, you're better at attack. We need to put you there. And he said it was just seeing what we're all good at.
And to be honest, being a head coach, going out onto the field, planning the sessions, reviewing the sessions, there's a lot to it, you know what I mean? So it probably gives him a little bit of a chance to kind of look at everything and have a bit more time to plan better and stuff like that. But I think the new players coming in, Peter Dooley, Josh Murphy, Adam Byrne, from Leinster, Hawkshaw as well, they'll definitely help and improve him. Seamus Hurley-Langton, I don't want to in any way be disrespectful, but you think must be some bit of Irish. The Seamus is spelled S-H-A-M-U-S. Hurley-Langton, he's a New Zealander, and he's impressed them a lot. I think he played for Manawatu, and he's a loose forward. Brian Ralston, another Australian who played sevens as well, came from Western Force. So again, they're a little bit unknown. But the way Connacht play, I think Connacht probably just need to manage games better and be kind of a bit more ruthless. I think the ambition that they show and the way they play the game, it's probably the flip side of what Munster need to do. They need to be a little bit more pragmatic and control tempos in the games and stuff like that more. But it was a disappointing season from last year. We know they can score tries. We know they're very dangerous when they get on the front foot. And it's a tough task for them first up going to Belfast to play Ulster on Saturday night. Ulster probably finished the season strong, should have been in the URC final. When you think of what happened against the Stormers, that late score they conceded, they blew Munster away in that quarter final. So that should be a cracker. But look, it's very early days. It's hard. We won't have teams till later on, and it's a tricky one, but I think getting a bit of momentum at the start is really important for all the provinces.
As they always say, you can't win it after the first few rounds, but it can be slipping away.
You just think if you miss out in playoffs by a point or two, and you go back to the first round or two, and you know.
Yeah.
What did you watch the Bledisloe yesterday?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So, in a word, right call, wrong call. At the end.
Hard call on Australia. Very hard call. Letter of the law. He did warn him a number of times. We've never seen it. I think Matthew Reynal should have said, if you don't hurry up, clearly, I'm going to give New Zealand a scrum. You know,
I think he had been kind of.
He had warned him a couple of times. Yeah. He warned him, but he should have said it out loud that if you don't hurry up and take this kick, I'm going to give a scrum to New Zealand. And he did that. It was a big controversial call. Obviously New Zealand went on to win the game. It was a crazy game, Adrian.
Mad.
Like, New Zealand were 31-13 up on 55, 60 minutes, and I'm thinking they're going to put 50 on Australia here. They were brilliant, New Zealand were. Australia's response, phenomenal. They come back. Nick White gets a penalty, 37-34.
Whiplash that over with his cowboy legs. The commentator.
There was one incident. There was one incident in that game that was really disappointing, I think, and it was the Darcy Swain clear out on Quinn Tupaia. He should have got a red card for that. I think the TMO did alert Matthew Reynal. Actually, they got 2 yellow cards in that sequence, and that from that breakdown, Tom Wright was yellow carded, and then when they looked and the TMO called Matthew Reynal, and Darcy Swain comes in from the side and he kind of grabs Quinn Tupaia's knee and it bent inwards.
Cynical enough.
He's out for a long time. Did he deliberately go in to hurt a player and damage his knee? I don't think so. But it was really, really reckless. If you go anywhere near the lower limbs, and we talk a lot about protecting players with the high shots, just look at Dan Levy, what happened to him a number of years ago. His career over. If you go anywhere near the lower legs like that, it can be career ending. So he should have got a red card, and but it was a crazy match, a brilliant game to watch.
One of Foley's teammates was over his shoulder when you watched the replay, roaring at him for about 10 seconds before Reynal takes a decision to award the penalty, to boot it out over the line. That's where I started to lose sympathy, I have to say, for Australia. Now, having said that, if it was us on the other end of it, you'd be crying blue murder. You'd be saying, typical, going with the All Blacks. But it is a healthy and timely reminder to all of us that they ain't dead until they're dead, because I mean, even they still needed to go and win it. Like, incredible.
Yeah. The whistle has never gone with them, you know, and still have some issues. But they, you know, for 40-50 minutes yesterday, they looked really, really dangerous, and so it was an incredible game.
Quinny, thanks a million for coming in. Enjoy the rugby over the weekend. Look forward to chatting.
We forgot to say just about Eddie Butler.
Yes.
I know we're under pressure time-wise, but that was devastating what happened to him. Lovely man.
So young.
You know, I met him in the circuit so many times over the years. He was a brilliant, brilliant commentator, and you know, it's a shocking kind of situation, and I was shocked when I heard it, as everyone in the rugby community. You know, he was a very, very popular man, Eddie Butler, and our thoughts and prayers are with his family and friends, and particularly people in Welsh rugby as well.
Yeah, the voice of rugby, and well said, Quinny. Few comments coming in at 25 to 10 before we leave you here. Derek Yo says, Adrian describing GA currently as fallow times is outrageous. We didn't have enough pitches in our club last night. So many adult teams training for championship, busiest time of the year, which of course is not what I said in relation to GA, but you know, Derek, don't let that stop you. Daniel Croak about Federer says, having none of this, he's the GOAT for what he's done on and off the court. What does off the court have to do with anything? I want to know who the best player is, not who's sound.
Well, I think if you're going to actually get to that level, a lot of the time it's the player that's sound off the court and on the court and is able to manage it as a whole is the great in the end, in my view.
I think you got to take it in the round. I think that's fair enough. And Pewell says, Adrian, obviously couch sports fan, going with whatever's on the satellite channels. GA clubs at the moment extremely busy playing wise from under 5 to adults, but it's not on Sky/BT. Get out, Adrian.
I don't know. Fair.
Yeah, I'd accept that on the chin. Righto, it is 9:37. It's Friday morning. Thanks a million, Aisling. Enjoy that. Enjoy your weekend.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Chat
Adrian.
to you next week. And brought to you live each morning, of course, by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're back on Monday morning. It'll be Ger and Johnny Ward. We're going to have the Gillette Labs performance rankings. Football journalist Ben Jacobs and Martin Lipton are going to focus on the weekend's Premier League action that's going ahead, of course. And we'll have a reaction as well to that first round of URC games and much more as well. Besides, right now we're going to leave you with the Republic of Ireland and Arsenal legend Emma Byrne, who very excitingly has just become officially a part of the Koi Gig podcast on Team OTB, and last night she was speaking to Will. Enjoy and have a good weekend.
OTB's women's football podcast, the Koi Gig Pod, you've probably caught it over the last season, where Karen Duggan joins Kathleen McNamee. Well, their team has grown by one ahead of the start of the new WSL season. Delighted to say the newest member of the Koi Gig Pod is Republic of Ireland legend Emma Byrne, who's with us now. Emma, welcome aboard the Koi Gig Pod and welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Delighted to be here and delighted to be the newest member of the team. Really looking forward to it.
It's the perfect way to start next week because the Women's Super League games were pushed back by 1 week following the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. So why not get an 11-time champion of the English top flight onto the team? How much are you looking forward to, particularly, I guess, crossing swords with Karen Duggan, your good mate over the next while, and arguing about the WSL and the Republic of Ireland national team and everything else that's going to come up with Kathleen on the Koi Gig Pod?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be great. And, you know, with the success of the Euros over the summer, everybody's interested in women's football now. And we are the team to bring it to you. So, yeah, it's going to be great chatting about what's gone on the weekend, all the highs, the lows, and, of course, particular attention to our Irish contingency over there.
And genuinely, I think we're at a point where the WSL has become the elite league because of the players that are there currently. And on the back of so many of those English players having won the Euros during the summer as well, like there's a remarkable excitement about this season on the back of everything that's gone through the last couple of months or so.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can kind of feel it, can't you? It's just building the momentum. And you know, I've said it for a long time that the WSL is probably the best league around. I mean, we want to keep those players, though. There's been a couple of transfers in the last couple of weeks that kind of takes away some of the talent from it. But you know what's good about it is that we can still see all those players playing around the world because women's football is growing. And of course, the platform is growing for us to be able to watch them on TV. So I'm going to keep an eye on those, the likes of Kira from Man City to Barcelona. And, well, you know, just heard now that Jackie Gronin's gone over to France. So we've lost another one of those top players. But you know what? We've signed plenty to talk about on the podcast.
Well, in many ways, we had transfer going both ways. You've gone from Barcelona, moved to Manchester. Now we've had a record transfer from Manchester going to Barcelona as well. So maybe everything balances out here.
Yeah, maybe she left because she heard I was coming. I don't know. I'm going to find out. I'm going to get the answers.
It's a massive opportunity, though, for Kira going there as the world's most expensive player now, but also joining, you know, a Barcelona team who've achieved a remarkable amount. You've been watching them close on over the last few seasons. Their Femini side have just been fantastic. Got to a couple of Champions League finals along the way. The Spanish League has been going from strength to strength, even just based on the attendances that we've seen at some of the games, and Barcelona breaking records in both the Champions League and in the Clásico last season. It's probably a very exciting time to join Barcelona.
Yeah, it is. I mean, just for the city alone, I mean, it's just a fantastic city, isn't it? But the club itself, I mean, it's a huge club. It's the biggest club in the world, let's be honest. And the women's team has definitely become that, or has become that over the last couple of years. And that's from the support of the men's team as well. You know, they've given them that platform to build and to grow. They've given them the support, and also, you know, media has improved over there. Still a long way to go, I have to say. It's not as good as the WSL yet, but the club itself have done a fantastic job in you know, making it visual and, you know, allowing the games in Camp Nou, which was fantastic and absolute brilliant. They have a record of you know, for women's fans and the crowds and stuff like that, but the men's as well. There weren't fans going to watch the men's team. They were all going to watch the women's, which I thought was very nice.
Yeah, I thought it was very important. I remember ahead of the Wolfsburg game, Xavi was talking about how excited he was to go to Camp Nou himself to watch the game, and Carlos Puyol was talking about you're trying to get people out to watch these games and to pick up the tickets to go along. It's amazing how club legends like that can have a huge influence in actually mobilising people to go to games.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about, you know, who's listening and who's watching. And obviously, when you've got someone like Xavi speaking, he's got a huge fan base, and there are plenty of people watching. So that's a massive advertisement for them. And you know, just giving that little bit of respect to the women's team and the women's football in general. Obviously, it's going to encourage people to go. But I don't know if you watched any of the games, but I was there, and the fans were absolutely loving it, watching good football. They stayed for an hour after the game, which I thought was incredible. They weren't there just for the football; they were there for the atmosphere, and you know, they really shown their support. And it was a bit of a pain in the neck, really, because it took me about 45 minutes to get out of the stadium. So that was annoying me. Yeah, no, it's just a fantastic thing. And, you know, the stadium itself is fantastic over there. And it's just down to the WSL now to try and push for bigger stadiums and better stadiums. And that's the next step. It's the next level.
Definitely. Like, it felt like a stark contrast because Barcelona were almost completely outpopulated by Eintracht Frankfurt in their Europa League knockout game, and then the women's team were playing either side of that and were actually filling the ground, which maybe told its own story about the men's team at Barcelona last year too. When it comes to the Women's Super League, what an exciting finish to the season last year. Went right down to the wire, and Arsenal were involved in Europe, and then Chelsea were able to secure the title on the final day. It seems it's probably well set up for a good title race again this season.
Absolutely, and you know, it gets better and better every year, so I'm not expecting anything less this season, especially with the signings. You know, Chelsea, it's interesting, really. The signings for Chelsea, Arsenal seem, for me on paper, seem to have made the better signings. Also, you've got Man City, who just about made the Champions League last season, made a massive load of signings there. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a really, really good league, getting better again, as I say, every year. Really excited. I was so excited last week for it to start. Of course, this is the first week of it this week, so we're trying to play catch up already. And then, of course, with all the international games, it's going to be a little bit broken. But, yeah, just buzzing for it to start. Can't wait. Tomorrow's the first game, and I think I'm going to pop along to watch.
When I look at the fixtures for this weekend, I can't help but look at it with a certain Irish prism with some of the Irish players who've gone over, and even like Liverpool coming back up into the top flight again, and with their large Irish contingent, and like we're excited to see how Leanne Kiernan is going to get on at top flight football after banging so many in the second flight over the last couple of seasons, and you had Stephen Fahy back up there again. Like, it's exciting to see the amount of players that have transferred over. I mean, we can argue the toss over whether that's a disadvantage to the Women's National League here, that some of these players have left. But you're going to have a lot of Vera Pauw's squad getting exposed to really good football ahead of that playoff now over the next few weeks.
Yeah, and you know, for me, that's what it's all about. If you want the Irish players to improve, they have to be playing, training day in, day out with top class players. And unfortunately, the only way for them to do that is to move across to England. So I think it's a fantastic thing. It's a great thing. You can already see them reaping the rewards with the likes of Denise O'Sullivan having gone to America. She's improved unbelievably. Katie as well, obviously. Niamh, Louise Quinn. You know, they have to do it, unfortunately. And I'm excited to see how Jess Zhu gets on as well. I'll be watching West Ham fairly closely this season. You've also got Tyler Toland, who we can't forget about in Spain, and not part of the Irish setup at the moment. But again, it's a great thing to see. Just that, you know, they need to get that experience abroad. And it gives us great scope to talk about, doesn't it, to follow these players in the WSL.
Yeah, like Jessu is one of those I think we'll be keeping a very keen eye on. Like, was going great here at Shelbourne, and then the opportunity came to go across. And when I see her playing for the Republic of Ireland, there's such kind of raw talent there. There's pace. There is a kind of a rawness about the way that she approaches her attack. Slowly but surely, as she refines her game, she could be a really, really important weapon in the Irish attack going forward.
She's going to be very important. And, you know, it is about playing and game time. And obviously she won't have been told that she's going to play every game. That's not how it works. She has to work, and she has to prove that she's ready and able. I don't think her performance with Ireland the last game will do her any harm at all. I thought she played really, really well. So, you know, and she has to prove it in training. And I think she's the type of player that will enjoy that challenge. And I think she's going to be a regular starter for West Ham. Maybe not before Christmas, but certainly after it.
Yeah. Do you feel it's a case of that is an important step now for her development? Because she had become a really, really important player within the Women's National League. But I think Vera has been very clear that she wants players playing professional football and playing at the highest level they possibly can.
Yeah, and obviously Vera has to be supportive of the Irish League, and as we all are, I really hope that improves. I mean, it doesn't look great that teams are dropping out. That's not a good start. But as I said, speaking from experience, we had to go abroad to improve and to play football. And yes, you can be a big fish in a little pond in Ireland, but at the end of the day, as soon as you move across to the Super League or England, America, France, Spain, no matter all of these leagues, you're going to see that you have to work as a completely different mentality, different standard level. And obviously that's going to bring you up to that level. And the little starlings will shine and get even better. And you can be the best in the league in Ireland, but at the end of the day, if you're good enough, you'll play in the WSL, and that's just how it is.
I know we're probably talking at the moment to some listeners and viewers who possibly watch the European Championships during the summer, might now be interested in dipping their toe and watching a bit of WSL. Who should they be watching out for in the season to come? Because it's never been more accessible when you consider the amount of games that Sky are going to be showing over the coming year as well.
Yeah, there are so many players. Obviously, you have to watch out for the Irish players. I mean, maybe those would be the ones that we want to watch. But every team has got somebody that will be of interest. Arsenal have made some great signings. You've got Lena Hurtig, a new signing. She's going to be interesting. Obviously, you've got Katie there. You've got Viv Miedema, who's world class. You saw her play for the Netherlands. She's a fantastic player. Everybody, everyone loves watching Chelsea because they're such a counter-attacking style team. So it's exciting to watch. They're always going to score goals. And of course, when you've got Sam Kerr in your team, she's always going to do something spectacular in a game. And then, of course, you've got the likes of City, who were one of the best teams for the last 5-6 years, dropping down, now have made 4 or 5 signings, Spanish players who've come, want to play football. Be interested to see how they progress in this very physical league, that not so much in La Liga. I know they're really enjoying it at the moment. Being in Manchester, I get to speak to a lot of those players, and they're excited about it. They're excited about the physicality, and they're excited about how they're going to play this season. There's lots and lots of things to talk about, to discuss, and we'll be doing that at every podcast.
Yeah, that's looking forward to the next one coming out next Tuesday, where now Emma's going to be a regular member of the group, as we'll put it, the co-host alongside Karen Duggan and also with Kathleen McNamee. We haven't had a chance to speak to you since the Republic of Ireland learned their playoff opponents. Now, I don't know whether in Austria they're going to stick this up on the dressing room wall, the fact that Scotland are advertising the fact that they're looking forward to a playoff against the Republic of Ireland. That might be a bit of motivation for Austria. But look, it's a very, very interesting playoff series, and it's so complex how this actually works out. But in many ways, the Republic of Ireland have to wait and see what happens with these games that are coming up, see what happens with Austria and Scotland, and then go and win. It's pretty much as simple as that, to keep it within their own hands about what will happen here.
Yeah, I mean, it is really complicated. I'm still a little bit in the dark about how it is, because even if Ireland beat Scotland or Austria, they're still hoping that Iceland are going to drop points, because otherwise they have to go in through another tournament phase, and really, really difficult. For me, I mean, it couldn't have got any worse, to be honest, because we're playing against Austria and Scotland are both. The three of us are very, very similar standard, very similar. If you look at the history, there's been 1-0, 2-1s, and winning and losing. And we want Iceland to drop points, and we've the toughest draw, so we wanted them to play against Iceland to try and get points off them. I think Scotland definitely would have done us a favour. Was talking to a couple of the Scotland players, and yes, they are confident. They're already talking about, they're inviting me over to Scotland already. And I keep telling them, I'm not going to Scotland, to watch Austria. If Austria win, obviously I'm going to go to Austria. Do you know what I mean? They are confident, already planning their celebration parties, to be honest. But also speaking to a couple of the Irish girls, and they're very confident, because I was a little bit of a Debbie Downer. I was like, oh, such bad luck. And they were like, no, it doesn't matter. We can beat both of them. So they're confident as well, which is great to see. counting the days, to be honest. I mean, we're talking about the WSL, yeah, and that's very exciting time. But for me, the huge focus in October for the Irish national team.
I think maybe things have changed a little bit mentally based on this campaign too, because it's understandable that there was a little bit of a kind of a psychological hangover from what happened in Ukraine, because that was one of those days where everything goes wrong, like a freak own goal, hitting the woodwork from a penalty, losing to a team who they know they should have beaten, and it would have put them very much on course to qualify for the European Championships. They had to kind of shake that off. And to me, it almost feels like since the Australia friendly, where things clicked quite well within that game, Ireland are confident, even if the performance isn't perfect. And I mean, look at the way the Slovakia game went for large stages, and it was nervy enough against Finland. It seems this team are now able to eke out results in those kind of tight situations.
Yeah, exactly. And I couldn't agree with you more. The Australia game seemed to be that turning point. Also against Sweden, like to come away from a game playing a team like Sweden, to be disappointed that you didn't win, and then disappointed you didn't draw with them, I think is a massive change in the Irish mentality. And it shows that we can compete against the best, and we can compete up there, and beating Australia, who are consistently in the final, the World Cup finals, I think is a massive boost for them as well. But I think Vera has helped that mentality, the winning mentality, bringing confidence. To the Slovakia game, I mean, we weren't impressed as spectators. The girls weren't impressed with themselves, I know that, but they just needed to get through it, and they had to win and win dirty, and they did. It's great to see that they can get results when they don't play well, and the fact that they know they haven't played well and they can do better. So you're just waiting for that just to turn. And I've said it when I was commentating on the game, they won't beat teams like Scotland and Austria playing like that. They know that when they do get to the World Cup finals, they know they're going to have to play much better than that, much better possession-based football. They really need to sort that out. And then just, you talk about possession, which is on another level, but you talk about the way you press, the way you defend, and that needs to improve a little bit as well. But we're just going to put it down to the fact of just getting the 3 points and getting through it, and not bothered about how you play. That's going to, it has to be a different mentality going into the playoffs, and then in New Zealand and Australia.
Can you see things evolving slowly but surely, maybe being able to play in the front foot a little bit more? Because I think now at this stage, after probably a lot of trial and error with players and positions and trying to work out who was going to be the focal point, and now it seems that, it looks like that's been sorted. And now personnel-wise, with the exception of maybe working out exactly where Katie McCabe is going to play, and many of us wanted to play further forward than playing at left wing back, and Vera sometimes has gone with the effectively 5 at the back with the 2 wing backs, and people have criticised it for being a little bit too defensive. Is it slowly evolving though towards when Ireland might be able to control the game a bit more rather than having to play on the counter attack?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that Vera Pauw wants to play Katie McCabe higher up. The fact is that sometimes, unfortunately, she has to play a bit deeper because of the personnel available. I think Megan Campbell coming back into the squad is a massive advantage for us, and it does mean that Katie can play higher, which, is a double advantage, so to speak. If we can keep Megan fit, that would be a massive goal for us. But, it's difficult. It's difficult when you're playing against high level and trying to keep possession. Every single player has to be comfortable on the ball. You have to have options on the ball. We've spoken about midfield getting on the ball. They're all ballers. You've got Denise O'Sullivan, Katie McCabe, you've got Rusha Littlejohn in there, who all love the ball to feet. But if they don't have the options to bounce it back or to, play 1-2s, it's very difficult for them to keep the ball. So everyone has to be comfortable and be looking to get on the ball. And I think there might be a couple of positions there that they need to work on in that regard. But in general, I think the key is keeping Megan Campbell fit. Unfortunately, she is prone to an injury. And then we can push Katie a little bit higher up and let her wander infield or wherever she wants to go. Who cares? Just to get her on the ball. And I think Heather Payne's been absolutely fantastic up there. And I think she's grown a lot in that position. She's learned how to keep the ball playing up there high on her own. But as I said again, for me, you have to get that press correct, because it's the last game I was really, I wasn't very impressed with the press, which is something that we've done quite well in the past.
Yeah, there's no point in having Heather Payne trying to run a lone furrow herself and to try and press down if the midfielder are a few yards too far back. And everyone has to be able to push up together if this is going to be effective.
Exactly, and we're not talking about fitness anymore, which is what we used to talk about, the Irish team, fitness and being physical. If you start talking about that, you've a long way to go. So it's not about fitness and pace. It's about the team being confident to push up. And when you're back 3, it's supposed to be a 3, by the way. So even that, the fact that we're confusing it with a 3 and a 5, obviously there's no clarity there, and the 2 fullbacks need to push higher up, and they need to know their jobs. Are they playing in a 3 or are they playing in a 5? Because it does make a difference to how you set up. And they play so deep. And actually, Brosnan is actually quite good at coming out and sweeping up behind, so that they can afford to play a little bit higher. Because if they don't play higher, it's impossible for the midfield to give Heather Payne that support in the press and in possession, which is where we break down. So it all starts from the keeper. It all starts her pushing her back line up. Starts with the confidence of the back line being a little bit higher. And for them to deal with that ball in behind. You're not going to be able to play in a final playing so deep and worried about that ball behind. Again, that's something that you need to work on in training and be very, very clear where you want that line and where you're comfortable with, and then allowing the midfield to push up and give that support to Heather, because we've seen it. She does a great job doing it on her own, but it's old school. We need to be a unit together, working together, and no gaps.
If I can tap into your experience as over 100 cap goalkeeper with the Republic of Ireland, it seems to me that Courtney Brosnan has come on a lot in the campaign just gone by. Like, there were so many question marks about who was going to be in goal for this campaign, and Vera had been moving and changing around her goalkeepers in friendlies beforehand. But to me, Brosnan has looked really solid during this campaign.
She really has. And, I'll be the first one to hold my hand up. I was one of those people, because I don't agree that a goalkeeper should be playing international football if they're not playing regularly for a club side. And that's what has been happening with Courtney Brosnan at Everton. That's probably going to change this season. Hopefully, again, we'll be keeping our eye on that. But she has done really well. She's dealt with everything extremely well. It's fair to say that.
OTB AM.
With Gillette.